because they weren't able to.
Call to order of a regular meeting of Goodyear City Council, 13 November 2006. Would you please join Councilmember Souza in the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, this council prays for guidance as we conduct the business of this city and for the benefit of its residents. We pray for the men and women who perform their daily functions that make this city a safe and excellent place to live. We pray and keep in our hearts the military who serve in distant and dangerous lands, and especially for those who have given their lives so that others may enjoy freedom as we know it. We pray all this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. All council members are in attendance. Ask for acceptance of the minutes of the regular meeting held on October 23rd, 2006.
I move we accept.
Second.
Special meeting held on 23 October and minutes of a special meeting held on October 24th. Could I have a motion to approve the three sets of minutes?
Motion to approve 3 sets of minutes.
Second. We jumped again.
We did.
Sorry, we jumped again, sir.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by stating aye, please. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, 7-0. There are no expenditures to ratify. Tonight we'll move to communications, and in communications we have comments and commendations from council members and from staff, and anyone in the public who would like to make a commendation to someone. This is an opportune time to do that. But first, certainly regarding commendations, Councilmember Souza would like to make a presentation.
Mr. Mayor and Council, if every citizen in Goodyear were like Manuel Lopez, this would be the kindest, the friendliest, and cleanest city on earth. Mr. Lopez is 91 years old and can be seen on a daily basis picking up litter as he walks with help of his walker down Palm Valley Boulevard. Not only does he pick up litter, but he also takes along a small broom that he uses to clean the sidewalk. Isn't that remarkable? This man is such a valuable member of our community. It is for that reason the mayor and council and I would like to recognize Mr. Lopez for his exemplary citizenship by giving him this plaque which says, Goodyear's mayor and council commend you on the outstanding job you have done keeping your neighborhood clean and attractive for so many years. Littering would cease in our city if everyone followed your example. You are an inspiration to all of us. November 2006. Thank you, Mr. Lopez. You are truly a treasure within this community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Souza.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Manuel. He doesn't need to go.
That's it.
His daughter was not kidding. I ride my bike in Palm Valley, and I stop by and talk to him occasionally, every chance I get, in fact, and he's normally in that area. And he does, on his walker with his broom, on the right-hand side, he has a little bag about that big with a plaque that he received from Palm Valley HOA in 2002.
Sweet.
And he carries it with him every day.
Real fine gentleman.
Yeah, no, he's balanced. Okay, commendations from other council members. Councilmember Holland?
I just wanted to let you guys know that last week, Councilmember Lord and I sponsored a table at the New Life Center luncheon, and just want to say thank you for all of the folks that were able to attend that luncheon and that were able to come at our request. So thank you so much. The second thing was I did attend the meeting with the Lipsco with Sean Bradford and Jim Nichols, and I felt that our comments were well received, and hopefully there's some Lipsco people here tonight for this discussion. So again, thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Souza?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This past Saturday, I had an opportunity to attend the Veterans Memorial Affair at the city of Avondale, and it was quite an impressive ceremony. I was a representative for the city there and met the council and the mayor of Avondale and extended our best wishes to them and thanked them for putting on such a program on an annual basis. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
I just wasn't sure if you wanted to recognize Commissioner Mays was in the audience, or if you were going to do that later on. So, but Commissioner Chris Mays
nice
has joined
time
us
to do
this
that,
evening.
really.
So, thank you for coming out from downtown, and congratulations on your reelection.
Yeah. We all second that, Commissioner. I attended the first ever conference of colleges in the city of Goodyear, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and the Vice Mayor was with me through the entire time, and Councilmember Antoniak was there for quite a bit also. But this was a conference in which we invited colleges who have expressed an interest in Goodyear to come and visit with us and visit with the developers of Goodyear to see if a partnership can be formed to help them locate in our city. And it was the most successful event I've attended in my 7 years on this council. These colleges are interested. We received a briefing from a representative from the Claremont colleges in Claremont colleges in California. We are actually going to investigate that model for the city of Goodyear. This is not unimportant. This is the single most important thing I think that the city has ever encountered, and an opportunity is unparalleled for us to be a center for education. We had 4 colleges present and a couple others in attendance, and this is pure excitement, let me tell you. So we'll be meeting with Claremont. We're going to visit the colleges to understand the character that they portray with their students and their families. And we're going to be on a fast pace over the next several months to bring colleges to Goodyear. Quality higher education to the city of Goodyear. And I failed to mention Dick Souza was there also. Okay, but I thank you for joining with me, and to the staff, outstanding work. The press supported us greatly, so thanks. The press showed up for the whole event too, and that was heartwarming. But I've never seen such a great turnout of developers, and they didn't know if they were going to gain a thing by attending this. But they came out and they supported us, and now several are very excited too. Okay, any other comments or commendations? Okay, let's now move to manager. Any comments?
One reminder, Mayor and Council, and that is this coming week is Friday and Saturday will be a council advance, and it will be held in room 117 at City Hall.
And the public's invited to that, of course. Opportunity now for anyone in the public to comment to the council on any subject which is not on this evening's agenda. Would anyone like to comment on the subject not on the agenda for this evening? Seeing none, we'll move to the consent agenda, and I'll ask the city clerk to read the items by title only, please.
Item 8A, Council will consider adopting Resolution 06-1100, declaring as a public record that certain document filed with the city clerk and entitled Ordinance 06-1031. Item A2, Council will consider for possible action adopting Ordinance 06-1031, amending Chapter 21 of the Goodyear City Code to provide requirements and procedures for issuance of permits for alarm permits, providing for separability, and providing for an effective date. B, Council will consider for possible action approving and authorizing the city manager to execute a contract between the City of Goodyear and the Arizona State Prison Complex, Perryville, to provide a prisoner work program. C, Council will consider adopting Resolution 06-1099, authorizing the city manager to execute an intergovernmental agreement with the town of Buckeye to share risk management services. Item D, Council will consider for possible action adopting Ordinance 06-1034, extending and increasing the corporate limits of the City of Goodyear, Maricopa County, Arizona, pursuant to the provisions of Title IX, Chapter 4, Article 7, Arizona Revised Statutes, and amendments thereto by annexing approximately 77.63 acres of land known as Citrus Ridge, generally located at the southeast corner of Lower Buckeye and Citrus Roads, and providing a city zoning designation of agricultural/urban. Item E, Council will consider for possible action adopting Resolution 06-1092, adopting Annex O of the Emergency Operations Plan. Item F1, Council will consider authorizing the city manager to award a professional and environmental services contract to Brown and Caldwell in an amount not to exceed $337,500 pursuant to the terms and conditions of the EPA, Crane Company, PGA, North Consent Decree, and the previous Brownfields contract approved by Council on August 28, 2006. Item 2, Council will consider authorizing the city manager to award a professional services contract to the law offices of Curtis, Goodwin, Sullivan, Udall, and Schwab, PLC, in an amount not to exceed $60,000 for the Brownfields project contract preparation, legal support, analysis of potential sites, and related assessment activities. Item 3, Council will consider authorizing the city manager to award a professional services contract to Brown and Caldwell in an amount not to exceed $120,712 for groundwater modeling. These services include groundwater flow and water quality, as well as projecting the potential for land subsidence associated with groundwater withdrawals at the Adem Water Company, number CIP WA0533. Item G, Council will consider for possible action approving the map of dedication for Perryville Road, Camelback Road, Sadea Parkway, La Mara Drive, and Campbell Avenue within the Sadea planned area development, an approximately 638-acre development bounded by Camelback Road, Indian School Road, Perryville Road, and Citrus Road. Item H, Council will consider for possible action approving the final plat for Sadea Parcel 2A, subdividing 33.9 acres into 70 single-family lots generally located at the northwest corner of Citrus Road and Campbell Avenue within the Sadea planned area development, subject to stipulations. Item I, Council will consider approving the final plat for Sadea Parcel 2B, subdividing 61.8 acres into 167 single-family lots generally located at the southwest corner of Camelback Road and Citrus Road within the Sadea planned area development, subject to stipulations. Item J, council will consider for possible action approving the final plat for Sadea Parcel 2C, subdividing 37.5 acres into 75 single-family lots, generally located approximately 1/4 mile west of the intersection of Citrus Road and Campbell Avenue within the Sadea planned area development, subject to stipulations. K, council will consider approving a comprehensive sign package for Litchfield Office Park, a professional office development on 2.7 acres, generally located at the southwest corner of Thomas Road and 140th Avenue, within Phase 2 of the Palm Valley Planned Area Development District, subject to stipulations. L, council will consider approving the final plat for Palm Valley Phase 9, subdividing approximately 209.3 acres into 218 single-family residential lots, 20 light industrial lots, 1 medium-density residential tract, and 1 public facilities district tract, generally located north of Camelback Road, west of the Sun Health property in Litchfield Park, and east of the Falcon Dunes Golf Course in Maricopa County, subject to stipulations. Item M, council will consider approving the final plat for Curtis Commons, subdividing approximately 40.21 acres of land into 106 single-family lots in the R17 single-family residential district located at the southwest corner of Cerebral Avenue and Harrison Street, subject to stipulations. And council will consider for possible action approving and accepting the map of dedication for the collector and local roadway rights-of-way and tracts for Montecito Village Phase 2, formerly known as Coronado Village Phase 2, in Estrella Mountain Ranch, generally located 3/4 of a mile south of the existing terminus of Estrella Parkway. Item O, council will consider approving the final plat for Montecito Village at Estrella Mountain Ranch, parcel 7.14, subdividing 27.7 acres into 92 single-family lots and 12 tracts generally located west of Estrella Parkway, approximately 3/4 of a mile south of West Star Drive in Village 7 of the Estrella Mountain Ranch Planned Area Development District, subject to stipulations. P, council will consider approving the final plat for Montecito Village at Estrella Mountain Ranch, parcel 9.26, subdividing 23.1 acres into 77 single-family lots and 11 tracts generally located west of Estrella Parkway, approximately 3/4 of a mile south of West Star Drive in Village 7 of the Estrella Mountain Ranch Planned Area Development District, subject to stipulations. Q, council will consider for possible action approving the final plat for Montecito Village at Estrella Mountain Ranch, parcel 9.4, subdividing 24.4 acres into 47 single-family lots and 6 tracts generally located west of Estrella Parkway, approximately 3/4 of a mile south of West Star Drive and Village 7 of the Estrella Mountain Ranch Planned Area Development District, subject to stipulations. R, council will consider approving the special use permit to allow a 45-foot Sprint wireless communication facility at Arizona Storage Solutions, generally located 850 feet west of the northwest corner of Dysart and McDowell Roads in the Palm Valley PAD, with a waiver from the height limitation of 30 feet in a commercial zoning district to allow a height of 45 feet, subject to stipulations. S, council consider adopting ordinance 06-1035, amending the Goodyear City Code by amending Chapter 2, Article 2-1 of the Goodyear City Code by deleting the existing Section 2-1-1B and replacing with the new 2-1-1B, deleting Section 2-1-3 and replacing it with new Section 2-1-3, deleting Section 2-2-2 and replacing it with the new Section 2-2-2, and amending Chapter 3, Article 3-3 by deleting the existing Section 3-3-1 and replacing with the new Section 3-3-1, deleting Sections 3-1-5 and replacing with the new Sections 3-1-5. These are amendments made to the city charter and approved by the voters of the City of Goodyear at the September 7, 2004 election. The charter was updated at the time, but the amendments were never incorporated into the city code. Item T, council will consider for possible action adopting Resolution 06-1093, approving a waiver and development agreement between the City of Goodyear and Evergreen, McDowell, and Pebble Creek LLC, and a consent agreement from Cardinal Capital Company regarding the proposed McDowell Road Commercial Corridor Improvement District. Item U, council will consider adopting Resolution 06-1094, approving a waiver and development agreement between the City of Goodyear, Westcor Goodyear LLC, Westcor Goodyear RSC LLC, and the Market at Estrella Falls LLC, and a consent agreement from Globe Land Investors LLC regarding the proposed McDowell Road Commercial Corridor Improvement District. And last but not least, council will consider adopting a transfer of funds in the amount of $1,500,000 to cover costs related to providing City of Goodyear office space at Veneta Business Park.
Thank you. Would anyone in the public wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Seeing none, would anyone on the council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Souza?
last but not least, I'd like to make a change in item V.
Item B?
V is
Bravo?
in Victor.
Victor.
V is in Victor.
V.
For the point of clarity, council approve a transfer of funds in the amount of $1,500,000 to cover costs related to providing office space at Veneta Business Park for the use by employees of the City of Goodyear. That doesn't leave it open, but it clarifies it, I think.
Okay, then, any other withdrawals from the consent agenda? I'd like to ask for a motion, and would someone add that? In fact, you can make the motion. And
I will do that, Mr. Mayor.
the consent agendas are A through V. 8A through 8V.
Go ahead.
Okay. I move that the council can approve consent agenda A through V by adding the following comment on B, ending at Veneta Business Park for use by employees of the City of Goodyear.
Second.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, a motion from Councilmember Souza and a second from Councilmember Scott. Further discussion on that? Okay, could I have a roll call vote, please?
Vice Mayor Cavalier?
Aye.
Councilmember Sousa?
Aye.
Councilmember Antoniak?
Aye.
Councilmember Scott?
Aye.
Councilmember Holland?
Aye.
Councilmember Lord?
Aye.
Mayor Kavanaugh?
Aye.
Passed 7-0.
Okay, and we'll now move to the business part of our agenda. We'll start with Sean Bradford, and he'll be asking the council to adopt resolutions to the Arizona Corporation Commission, the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, Maricopa County Environmental Services Department requesting intervention on the City of Goodyear's behalf to address ongoing odor issues from the Litchfield Park Service Company's Palm Valley Water Reclamation Facility. Sean?
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Before I get into my presentation, I would just like to recognize two people in the audience, and they've also both asked to speak. Arizona Corporation Commission Commissioner Chris Mays and Bob Dodds from the Litchfield Park Service Company. So before I start, I'll let Chris Mays come up and address Mayor and Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, council members, it's really a great honor to be here with you today and to address you. And we appreciate, the Commissioner appreciates the opportunity to update you on the situation from our perspective. And I first want to thank you all, especially the Mayor and Mr. Antoniak for their leadership on this issue, and also for the Kirschbaums and for the other residents who really were the ones who brought this to our attention. It's unfortunate that the company was not the entity that brought it to our attention. It had to be residents and the City Council that did. But for those in the audience that don't know, the Arizona Corporation Commission is the entity, the statewide entity that regulates or one of them anyway, that regulates private wastewater and water companies. And so I believe we very much do have jurisdiction over this issue. And the Commission is extremely concerned about these odor problems. And ever since we met with the mayor and with representatives of the company this summer, after the issue was brought to our attention again by residents of Goodyear, we've been trying to address the issue. Unfortunately, complaints about the odors continue to come in, and the problem has not been resolved. But I do want to let you know about some of the things that we have underway. And first, let me say I wholeheartedly approve of your resolutions, and I intend to take them back to my fellow commissioners. They will be docketed formally in every case that is pending before the Corporation Commission involving Lipsco. So they will be formally docketed and considered as part of those cases. In addition, after we met with you, I brought the issue to the attention of the Commission during a pending case, and we ordered our staff to go out and investigate the odors. When they arrived at the Lipsco plant, indeed, the odors were continuing. It was a problem when our staff was there, so they smelled them. And they learned from the company that the company was engaging in several activities to address the problem, which I assume the company will talk to you about today. We took further action when I brought the fact that the odors were continuing to a staff meeting. And at that staff meeting, we decided to, as a commission, pen a letter to the company with the signatures of all 5 commissioners expressing our deep concern about these odors. And asking the company to provide the Commission with any and all documentation related to the odor problem, and to tell the Commission what they believe the problem is being caused by and what they intend to do about it. Second, the Commission also has in front of it an order, a recommendation from our staff that will be addressed at our meeting next week. And this I wanted to bring to your attention. This recommendation by our staff this has to do with a proposal by the company for a hookup fee for its Lipsco plant. Our staff, the Commission staff, is recommending to the Commissioners that we not approve that hookup fee until Lipsco is able to provide us with a letter from either DEQ or from the county stating that the odor problem has been resolved and that its phase 1 carbon absorption unit has been installed and is operational. So that will be voted on by the Commission next week at our open meeting next week. I think that will provide at least some economic incentive for the company to resolve the issue as quickly as possible. In addition, at that open meeting, will give each commissioner an opportunity to, shall we say, drill down on these issues and question the executives of the company in open session about why the problems continue. And finally, I think you will be hearing about the company's proposals for a long-term solution, which is to replace the existing undersized odor control equipment with, and that has an estimated construction schedule to begin in the third quarter of 2007. Phase 1 would be complete by the end of this year. One of the issues that I think the Commission absolutely has to address is why this odor control equipment was undersized to begin with, which I think simply cannot ever be allowed to occur again, either at this private wastewater company or any other private wastewater company in the state of Arizona. So with that, I'll turn it over for the other folks. I'd be glad to take any questions that you may have, and I just want to assure you, first of all, thank you again for your activism on this issue, and assure you that the Commission is very serious about getting it resolved this year.
Thank you for your diligence in this matter. For several months, you've helped us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. And if you have any other, anything else, please, I know your staff has been in contact with us regularly, but we're there for you, so thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Could we put, there we go. I just wanted to provide a little bit of background, just for the audience's benefit. The residents and business owners located in and around the area of the reclamation facility have been in consistent contact, I don't want to say constant, but quite often in contact with city staff regarding fugitive odors. The fugitive odors have been an ongoing nuisance that affects a large area of the population living and working in the area associated to the Palm Valley facility. Staff has been in constant contact as well with Bob Dodds and his team, trying to get updates. We attended, as Councilmember Holland noted last week, the second community liaison meeting, which I think benefits the residents in the area and the business owners, to let them know and to provide them updates, and I think that was a positive meeting. I prepared just an aerial here. The yellow area in the middle is the actual property, that is the Palm Valley plant, and that bluish circle represents a 1.5 mile radius. So when we talk about odors and we talk about prevailing winds, even within a 1.5 mile radius, there's a large piece of the city population, including the retail along Litchfield, and then some of the proposed employment on McDowell that is affected. When we take that circle and move it out to 1 mile, again, we're west past Bullard Wash, we're almost to Dysart, we're south on Van Buren, and we're up into a good sizable chunk of Palm Valley. So it is a concern of staff that these issues have been ongoing and need to be addressed. This isn't going away. The facility is continuing to grow, as is this area, and it's going to become very dense. And we're worried that, given the density and how everyone is tightly packed in, small operational issues with a prevailing wind can affect a large populace. The facility opened in 2000, and I think the issue that we have is during the permitting process, management of Lipsco and the equipment manufacturer assured the city that there would be full odor control in place. And now that we're having these issues and the undersizing, I think there's some concerns if that obligation was met at the beginning. And then also, the operation of the facility would not adversely impact local residents. There is a 150-foot odor easement, and those homes will be relatively close to that facility. So we need to make sure that we have a odor control system that's in place and is that fully operational at all times, so we can avoid these situations. We're recommending 3 resolutions. We feel that intervention by the ACC, ADEQ, and then Maricopa County will help the city address the ongoing odor issues and hopefully bring this problem to a close. These regulatory bodies oversee the O&M of the facility. They're able to impose penalties, deny permits, restrict future expansion, etc. That's why we're recommending adoption of the 3 resolutions that we've presented to you this evening. Some of the other options that we're looking at, we could use existing city ordinances through public nuisances or offensive premises to impose a fine. We could also enact a city ordinance that would increase penalties, and we could target, against treatment facilities that would create offensive odors in public nuisances. One of the other options that we're looking at, and it's tied to the MEG 208 process, we could request assistance from the various regulatory bodies that are on the screen as part of the requisite permits and permitting conditions for a plant, either expansion or new facility that's permitted, and there's some options there that we could take as well. At this point, we're still recommending a resolution. I believe the Commissioner, Chris Mays, stated that she will fully embrace that, and hopefully this will help address the situation. At that point, it was brief. I just wanted to hit on the bullet points. I'm more than welcome to answer any questions you may have, and Bob Dawes has asked for a few minutes of your time, and he's got a few slides as well. So at that point, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Dodds, would you like to
Thank
speak?
you. He just pushes that to advance.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, staff of City of Goodyear, and citizens of Goodyear. My name is Bob Dodds. I'm the president of Litchfield Park Services Company. Although we operate within the regulations required by Maricopa County, we're fully aware and appreciate the fact that there are non-regulated odors that are unpleasant and are causing problems. We're moving as expeditiously as possible to resolve those issues. But I have a duty and obligation, of course, at the same time to make sure that what we do is technically correct and is also cost effective. And I'd like to call on our engineers, Russell Wachter of Carollo Engineering, to give you a presentation of what we have been doing and are planning on doing to resolve these odor issues. Russell?
Good evening, Council. My name is Russ Wachter. I'm a partner with Carollo Engineers based out of Phoenix, Arizona. And I'm here on behalf of LIPSCO this evening to provide a brief presentation providing the Council, Commissioner Mays, concerned residents and other stakeholders regarding the status of the odor control systems improvement project that we are working on with LIPSCO. Mr. Bradford showed an overview of where the facility is currently located just to the north of McDowell Road. And this is a little more of an aerial view of the plant. And there's a couple buildings that I wanted to point out here, which you may be able to read from the screen. One is the solids building that's kind of in the northwest corner of the site, and the other one is the Headworks building. And those two particular buildings are the source of the majority of the odors that are being experienced by the surrounding residents at the site. Carollo Engineers was brought on approximately 6 weeks ago to help LIPSCO to identify in detail both the short-term and long-term improvements that are required and can be implemented at the Palm Valley plant in order to reduce or mitigate the odors that are being experienced so that LIPSCO can practice a good neighbor policy with the surrounding neighbors and commercial. I wanted to talk briefly about the efforts that have been completed to date, as well as what is planned for this odor control project. As I mentioned before, Carollo was brought on about 6 weeks ago. Prior to that, during about the first half of 2006, there were a number of activities that the plant staff had been doing, trying to implement in order to improve some of the odor problems that had been identified. There were some different operational modifications to how they were operating the plant. They implemented some procedures with some of their contract haulers regarding some of the solids bins that were hauled off-site. They wanted to make sure that those bins, as they were brought on-site, were thoroughly washed. They implemented some air curtains on some of the doors on one of the buildings, the solids building, which seems to be the largest source of the odors. They also installed a new chemical storage tank to increase some of the capacity of the existing odor control system, and was also working with the manufacturer of that system on some modifications to improve the situation. So some of those activities were going on the first part of the year. In July, they also contracted with another firm to do an odor monitoring study at this site to get a better handle on some of the odors, the concentrations, and where those were originating from. Carollo was brought on board the 1st of August to evaluate this data, the efforts that were done to date, and to look, as I mentioned, some of the short-term and long-term recommendations and solutions to get a handle on this odor problem. What we recommended was a two-phase approach. What we call phase one is some short-term improvements, something that we thought we could implement and get installed as quickly as possible to try to reduce these odors, to provide some benefits to some of the concerned residents. That is ongoing, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. In addition to that, we also have some long-term recommendations relative to some of the comments that Commissioner Mays made involved with upsizing some of the existing units that are on the site. As Commissioner Mays noted, we're planning on having the short-term odor control system online by the end of the year. That is actually in construction. I've got a slide of that a little bit later. And then the phase two stuff, we're working on the evaluation and the design and hoping to get that involved as early as middle of 2007, possibly as late as 2007, depending on the procurement of some of the long lead equipment items that we're talking about. Relative to the phase one, the short-term improvements, Commissioner Mays mention that we're looking at a activated carbon polishing unit downstream of the existing scrubber system. In fact, we were able to relocate an existing small unit to provide some immediate short-term relief on one of the scrubbers. That work was completed in mid-September. We're currently involved in the design and construction of a larger unit that will treat all of the odors discharged from both existing odor control systems. As I mentioned, that is underway and should be completed by the end of the year. When I talk about carbon absorption polishing, basically the foul air that's generated in the two buildings, the solids building and the headworks building, is both captured by ductwork. It's withdrawn through some fans, and it goes through a odor control system called a wet chemical scrubber. And typically, those types of systems are satisfactory in removing 98, 99% of the H2S and other odors that are generated on a treatment plant like this. However, based on the odor monitoring study that was done in July, there seemed to be some breakthrough at times of the H2S. So what we are proposing in terms of the short term is capturing the air that typically goes through the system and then is exhausted to the atmosphere. We're going to capture that and run it through a secondary odor control system, the carbon unit, which will further polish the air before it's exhausted to the atmosphere. In terms of where we are relative to this phase of the project, as I mentioned, the first effort we did was an engineering evaluation. That report was submitted back to LIPSCO and the county in September. We've been working very closely with the county, the Environmental Service Department, relative to the approval to move forward with these types of projects. They've been very good to work with, in fact, and they actually gave us an interim approval to proceed with the procurement of the odor control system even before the final plans and drawings were completed. So that approval to procure the system was provided near the end of September. We've been working very closely with the actual manufacturer of the system. The notice to proceed to Daniel Company, which is the company that manufactures the system, was given by LIPSCO in October. And we're continuing to coordinate with them on the actual design documents that need to be developed to get the subsequent approval from the county for actual installation of the unit. And then as soon as that approval is done, there'll be the construction phase. And as I mentioned, this is all underway and planned to be completed by the end of the year. This is just a photo of the actual unit that's currently being constructed over in California by the Daniel Company. Just wanted to let you know that this progress is moving forward, and we will hope to have this complete as we've identified. In terms of the second phase, the first phase was really try to get something in line as quickly as possible to help with some of the odor issues. But as Commissioner Mays identified, as part of our evaluation, we did recognize that there's some longer-term issues that need to be resolved to fully mitigate the odors on the site. And the main issue is to upsize and replace the existing chemical scrubbers that are on site with some newer, larger units. We also have to do some reconfiguration of some of the ductwork. There's some areas that we want to seal up to try to keep the odors within those buildings. I know that the LIPSCO staff is already working with a contractor scheduling to remove some of the grit and debris that we believe is in some of the tanks from the original startup of the plant, which may be also contributing to some of the odors. And we're also looking at evaluating just the overall process of how they're handling the solids to see if there's some things we can do to reduce the odors on the site. So what the steps are, what the necessary steps are for this phase 2, again, is to do the engineering evaluation, to go ahead and do the detailed design, submit those to the Maricopa County Environmental Service Department and work through that approval process, and then the bidding and construction. As I mentioned before, some of the uncertainty about when this will go online is really related to the lead time of some of the equipment that we have for this phase 2. We're going to be working with the suppliers to try to expedite that as much as possible. But right now, it's hard to get a firm commitment from a supplier without a specific purchase order in place. So we're hoping by the middle to the third or fourth quarter of 2007 to have these long-term improvements online as well. Now, I recognize I went through that rather quickly, If you have some additional questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I just wanted to give you an update on behalf of LIPSCO that there are efforts underway to try to address the odor issues that have been recognized. And we are working, as an engineering company, working as expeditiously as we can. There's just several steps that we have to go through to make sure that we're doing the due diligence that's required so that there aren't going to be issues relative to the proper sizing of the equipment as we go through these modifications. So I don't know if there's any questions from staff or from the council, but I'm happy to answer them if I can.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to comment on this subject? Mr. Kirschbaum?
We attended a meeting at LIPSCO. We attended a meeting at LIPSCO on Wednesday with Councilwoman Holland, and we were told that Phase 2 should be completed by the end of the second quarter of 2007. Now we're hearing the third quarter to the end of 2007. So I just want a clarification as to what happened in 4 days.
The chart said July 1, 2007.
Right, but
He just stated now the third quarter of 2007 towards the end of 2007, which is a little past the June of 2007.
Sir?
If I can respond to that real quick, without going back to the slide on the timeline, what we are shooting for is to have the system online by July of 2007. What I indicated was right now we're a little uncertain about the lead time of the equipment, so that's where the uncertainty, whether it's going to happen by middle of 2007 or the latter half of 2007. And we hope to get a better handle on what the lead time delivery is going to be for that equipment. And as we talked about on Wednesday night, we'll continue the communication with you either through the liaison meetings or I think Mr. Dodds will be providing additional communication so that as we get further in the project and we have a better handle on the actual schedule, we'll let you know. But right now we're shooting for the middle of 2007, but just recognizing that some of those components are outside our control. It may slip into later in 2007.
Okay, thank you. Before I ask the clerk to read the resolutions by title only, on council we could do all three resolutions at one time with a single motion. Does everyone agree with doing that?
Agree.
Okay, great. Okay.
Resolution 061095, the resolution for the purpose of seeking assistance from the Arizona Corporation Commission to resolve odor problems at Litchfield Park Service Company's Palm Valley Water Reclamation Facility in Goodyear, Arizona. Resolution 061096 for the purpose of seeking assistance from the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality to resolve odor problems at Litchfield Park Service Company's Palm Valley Water Reclamation Facility in Goodyear, Arizona. Resolution 061097 for the purpose of seeking assistance from the Maricopa County Environmental Services Department to resolve odor problems at Litchfield Park Service Company's Palm Valley Water Reclamation Facility in Goodyear, Arizona.
Okay, thank you. Could I have a motion?
Motion to accept Resolution 06-1095, 1096, 1097 as read by the clerk.
Second.
Motion from Councilmember Scott and a second from Councilmember Souza. It's open for discussion. Councilmember Souza.
Mr. Mayor, there are several members of the council that have been on this dais since the inception of this wastewater treatment plant. And at the time, we went through the design, the construction status, and we were assured at that time, and odor emission was primary in the council's concern at that particular time. And we were assured that odor was not going to be a problem. This was, I believe, a Swedish company that put this in place, and they came highly recommended to us and to LIPSCO at that particular time. Now, my question is this. If this thing is not functioning now or hasn't been functioning, is it because of the increased waste that is moving into this plant from growth? And that's the question I put to the engineer and to LIPSCO itself.
Councilman Sousa, to address that question in particular, the way that the odor control system is designed and operated is really independent of the volume of wastewater that goes to the plant. It's really a function of the physical size of the facilities that are being treated. In this case, that Headworks building and the solids building. The way these systems are traditionally designed, it's based on a certain number of air changes per hour to try to keep a certain volume of fresh air coming into the building while evacuating that foul air and treating it through the odor control system. So when we talk about, in our professional judgment about the existing system being undersized, it's really about the capacity of the system as it was designed for, and really independent of the actual volume of wastewater flow that's coming into the plant. Now, the exception of that would be if the plant's expanded and additional facilities are constructed, tankage is constructed, then there would need to be corresponding increase in the odor control system.
Well, then what you're telling me is that really growth wasn't anticipated when this plant was constructed.
I'm not sure that's what I'm saying, Councilman. What I'm saying is that the way that the system is operated and designed is really independent of whether there was 1 MGD or 3 or 4 MGD going through the plant. The way it was designed was a function of the size of the tankage, and that's how the odor control system should have been designed and rated for a certain capacity based on the size of that facility. Unfortunately, I was not the designer of the original plant, so I can't speak specifically to the criteria that the original designers used.
Okay. My next question would be, with the new equipment that you're going to bring on board, is that going to be compatible with the equipment that's in place now?
The first phase that we're proposing, the odor control or the carbon system, that is compatible. It's going to actually be just downstream in terms of airflow to the existing units. So we won't be, for the first phase, the existing units will continue to operate, but rather than discharge to the atmosphere, we'll capture that in additional ductwork and run it over to the second unit. So it's a two-phase system. For the long-term second phase work, what we're talking about doing is replacing those existing scrubbers that are there now with new, larger units. But in terms of the ductwork and the chemical tanks and the other components that are there, the new system would be compatible with the facilities that are on site.
Okay. Thank you. My next question is to Commissioner Mays.
Yes, Councilman.
Commissioner, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Sure.
During the last meeting, which you weren't in attendance, you had a representative from the commission attending it, and there was some concern on staff that they heard some statements made that the commission itself did not have authority in the area of odor concerns. Can you answer? Clarify that for me?
I disagree with that opinion. Councilman, the commission is a little bit like this council in that we have 5 members basically with equal power. Well, I don't know if that's how it runs here, but we have 5 members. All of us basically have the same say. And 3 of us are lawyers, so then you get all sorts of different legal interpretations. But I am of the firm belief that the Corporation Commission does have jurisdiction and does have the power to address odors. The state constitution says that private water companies, private public service corporations, which we regulate, must provide safe, reasonable, and reliable service to their customers. We have statutes that say the same thing. And that very specifically give us power to address companies that are not operating in a safe, reasonable, and reliable manner. And I believe having a situation where odors are emanating from a facility that are obnoxious to residences and businesses is not reasonable under any circumstances. There is a separate issue, Councilman, with regard to whether or not an agency like the county has determined that legally they are over the allowed parts per billion, which I believe is 30 parts per billion. And, I know that they're monitoring that. And I think, again, those are the kinds of questions that we're going to ask next week and get to the bottom of. But I believe you have a majority of the commission that believes that we do have the ability to regulate this situation.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You bet.
2 more questions for Mr. Walker, please. Short term, we talk about short term. What is that going to do to cutting down the odor volume that's emitted from the plant?
Well, as I indicated before, some of the results from the odor testing that was done by another consultant indicated that at times there were some spikes or possible breakthrough through the existing odor control system. So the short-term system that we're putting in now, the carbon absorption polishing unit, will be able to reduce those odors to essentially zero. However, as I indicated to the group on Wednesday night, as part of our evaluation related to the potential, or in our opinion, the undersize of the existing systems, there seems to be some fugitive emissions that are coming out of the building at times based on how the HVA system is being operated. And really the only way to resolve all of those fugitive emissions, in our opinion, is to upsize the existing scrubber so that we maintain a negative pressure within those buildings at all times so that those fugitive emissions cannot go outside the building and disrupt the public. So to answer your question specifically, the short-term carbon system will help with some of the odors that are occurring, but we believe that the need for the larger scrubber units should take care of the additional fugitive emissions that seem to be evident on the site.
Okay. And with that in mind, I am also concerned with the length of the July 2007 completion date, as the residents and the business owners have expressed their concerns. Is there any way that you're going to be able to speed that up at all?
We're going to do our best to do that. We've already, under this first phase, we're kind of doing the design and construction almost simultaneously and working with the county on some of these approvals. So that's the approach that we'll continue to take on the phase 2, is to, there's still some engineering evaluation or some calculations that need to be done to make sure that we get the correct sizing of the new systems. And with that, then we'll work with Lipsco to identify manufacturers and work to try to get as quick of a lead time for this equipment so that we can get something installed and continue to work closely with the county so that we can expedite the permitting process to get the approval to construct. So we will be fast-tracking this as much as we can, but as the last slide that I had pointed out, there's still a couple sequential steps that we have to do to make sure that this is engineered correctly so that we don't have problems in the future.
Keep pushing it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Walker, if you will, please. A couple of years ago, we heard from the people at this plant that this plant was built so that it would handle anything that was coming around for the next 5 or 10 years, or at least 5 years. And now we find that it doesn't meet that need. And I guess one question I have, are you bringing in solids from another plant or from somewhere else other than the local facilities? Are solids being processed there that are other than just from Litchfield, Lipsco area?
To my knowledge, no. I believe there's no indication of that, and Lipsco is indicating that that's not the case.
Okay, so what you have in that plant is the growth of our local area and nothing more than that's causing this problem.
Correct.
Okay, next question is, with this happening, with this plant, and I guess this, and I'm glad to see the Commissioner May is here to hear this, because are the plants that are owned by the city being scrutinized by the same kind of thing? And I guess this would be more for Sean to answer, but is the scrutiny going on, and do we have inspectors from the county, and who is monitoring all of this so that this doesn't happen to one of our plants?
Mayor, Vice Mayor Cavalier, we have to comply with the same regulatory requirements that Lipsco does. Lipsco has the added, regulatory body from the ACC. We are not a private company. We're a municipality. So we also comply with city code. We have nuisance ordinances as well. And our plants are designed in the next phases to get full odor control in place so that we do not cause a nuisance and cause issues. Because the treatment plants that we have currently, as the city continues to grow, we will start to see encroachment from residential and commercial development, and we're very cognizant of that, and we're making design choices and preparing to implement plans to address those issues.
Yeah, because the last resort is to go to the Corporation Commission. That's when we can't get any answers from anyone else at the place where these answers should be taken care of, or these questions should be taken care of. And so my concern is that anything like this might happen in any of the plants that the city owns and is operating. And I want to make certain that we don't have this kind of a situation come up with one of our plants, because this is not acceptable. And the people that live in that area should not be expected to live with these odors even for 6 months.
No, I agree. The 3 water reclamation facilities that we have currently in their master plans are assumed absorption rates and expansion, and associated with that are full noise and odor control. So we will be in full compliance at full build-out as we continue to grow.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Antoniak?
Yeah, just following on the Vice Mayor's, the buffer specifically, I mean, obviously we have a unique circumstance here, but the big difference between city infrastructure and the infrastructure we're dealing with from Lipsco is the buffer. I mean, that's the unique situation here. We've got 500 feet or 1,000 feet in some.
Correct. Where I believe our buffer currently is 1,000, and as some of our plants build out, it'll be 350 feet.
Okay. Yeah, just a couple of quick comments, and I know Algonquin that currently owns Lipsco kind of adopted this issue and the undersizing of the issue, but I'd encourage you all to go back and talk to the people you bought it from, because it sounds like you have an issue with the undersizing of your equipment, which I would assume that Commissioner Mays and her peers are going to question your ability to pass that rate through to those of us that are ratepayers in your district, or at least I would think that they would be discussing that as you go down for rate approval. And then another comment would be, having been on the receiving end of the same commission that you're going to be dealing with in a former career of mine, I would encourage you to be a good corporate citizen and do things like buy year-long subscriptions to Gold Canyon candles for your neighbors. And I mean this in no jest, but I would encourage you to even look at their air intake systems and talk about filters on their systems if you can rent them from companies or something. You've got businesses you've got a dance studio next door to you that have hundreds and hundreds of kids and families in and out of that dance studio every day. You got folks' tax consulting business that's going to pick up in April, and you're going to go through 1 or 2 more Aprils, maybe 1 April at least, where they're going to have folks in and out of their business. So I'd encourage you to be $25,000 here or there. Good corporate citizen, I'm sure, goes a very long way in the community. But please don't take this as and I look at, I'm voting in favor of these this evening because I look at these as our responsibility to elevate this to the next level of government. We have no ability whatsoever outside of maybe some nuisance laws and fining you and slapping you on the wrist for letting your dog loose without a leash or those sort of things. And so I really look at this as our responsibility to educate our residents as well as the businesses that operate within our municipality. So that's why I'm supporting it this evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilmember Scott?
I support what Councilmember Citizen said here a while back. I toured this plant in 2000. I think it was 2000 when it was initially completed. And I asked the same question, and I was told that odor control would not be a problem. Now we've had this problem for well over a year, and it's only been the past 6 weeks that we brought in what sounds like a reasonable engineering company to look into the solution to the problem that's been going on for quite a while. I don't expect it to be answered tonight, but I hope to the Corporation Commission, and before fines are levied, if indeed they are, that somebody from Lipsco explain what's been going on during this dormant period where everyone's been looking in the other direction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just a question for Mr. Dodds. Have you identified and are you prepared and able to commit the funding necessary to accomplish Phase 2 in a timely manner?
Mr. Mayor and Council, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Without rate increases.
Okay, let's see. We've got, we've had the motion. And, okay, could I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Scott?
Aye.
Councilmember Holland?
Aye.
Councilmember Lord?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Cavalier?
Aye.
Councilmember Sousa?
Aye.
Councilmember Antoniak?
Aye.
Mayor Kavanaugh?
Aye.
Passed 7-0.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
We'll now move to consider adoption of a resolution to form an improvement district for McDowell Road. Brian Dalkey.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the Council. I'm here tonight to bring for you for consideration a resolution of intention to form the McDowell Road Corridor Improvement District. And this has been a subject that we brought to you in various forms over the past year, and we're in about step 9 of 11 through this current process. But we've literally had, not only with staff time, but with our consultants and certainly the development community, hundreds of hours as part of this project. So tonight we are going to briefly go through how we got here, but I'm also going to turn over the lectern to the engineer for Wood Patel so we can talk real quickly about the phasing, and then finally I'll turn it over to Keith Hoskins, who's with Gus Rosenfeld, who is making sure that we follow all the state statutes, as there are many as it relates to improvement districts. The commercial corridor that we're talking about is generally bounded by Interstate 10 on the south, Pebble Creek Parkway, and we come on over to Encano, Bullard. So we're pretty much in this region right here is the improvement district that we're talking about. Very large improvement district. In fact, it's one of the largest. In fact, I'm told it's going to be the largest in terms of funding in the history of Arizona. So it is quite a big project. But what an improvement district generally is that the government has an opportunity, municipalities have an opportunity to have public infrastructure financed through assessment bonds. And these assessment bonds are generally or will be passed on to the landowners. And in the case of those properties that you saw in the aerial, and we'll again go through that very quickly, they will be assessed the payments for reimbursement or of the bonds that we will be selling. But this does require City Council approval per state statute. The infrastructure improvement area, and this is just another look at it, you can see the boundaries that are within here, and as importantly, you'll see the different parcels that are involved, and most of which are Westcor and Globe Corporation. Evergreen Devco is party to it, as well as Tang Realty. So those are the primary landowners that are going to be the landowners that are going to be involved in this district. The project team, and again, I just wanted to take a second on this because of the amount of time that these folks have put into this. I've had the opportunity to work closely with our city staff, and while there have been several, two primarily stand out, and that's Kim Bendon, who's my management assistant, and Dave Ramirez in engineering, have put a lot of work and effort into this to make it work. Gus Rosenfeld, our bond counsel, that is, again, making sure that we are dotting all the I's and crossing the T's. Both Keith Hoskins, who's here tonight, along with his partner, Scott Ruby. And certainly Wood Patel, whom you've heard from before. They presented on Bullard Wash to council previously, and you'll see that the group that's involved with them. But tonight you'll be hearing from Pete Hemingway very briefly. Developers and landowners, as we talked about before, Westcor Globe Corporation, and the folks very quickly that have been involved in that are Dave Scholl, Garrett Newland, Rob Bassett, and Christine McWright that have worked very diligently with us. Globe Corporation, I see Ray Carter's here tonight, but George Getz as well. Evergreen Devco, Laura Ortiz and Luke Giovanardi. I'm not sure if they're in the audience, but again, just lots and lots of time and effort that have worked with us. Howard Grace with WM Grace Development Company, and then Tang Realty that is involved in this as well. So just wanted to publicly recognize them. There's a lot of mass coordination when you look at virtually $80 million in public infrastructure. That's a big number. And as part of that, we have these folks that have been involved. Suncor is going to be constructing a portion of it, and you're going to be hearing a little bit more from them or about them in a few minutes as far as the phasing. But, and I did, let's go back. There we go. Previous slide. One of the things that we looked at on this project is how many times do you want to construct Pebble Creek Parkway? So if you look at Pebble Creek Parkway, we've been able to reduce it to 3 different construction projects as opposed to it could be 8 or 9. You have 4 landowners in here that are Wells Fargo, Steve Johnson, Great American Capital, March Development. And they've all come in together and working with Suncor. And I want to recognize Jay Ellingson for his recognition that this really took a partnership effort. They stopped what they were doing, and they allowed these other developers and landowners to come in and join in their construction along with Westcor. Otherwise, we would have had Pebble Creek Parkway torn up 8 or 9 times as opposed to 3 different construction projects. So again, Jay, thank you very much. See you out there. The other mass coordination, as we look at other governmental agencies, we have Roosevelt Irrigation District, certainly, and you'll see that the dry-up's going on right now on Pebble Creek Parkway. I think they have about 14 days with which to construct that. ADOT, Arizona Department of Transportation, again with the Bullard Interchange that's going in here, a lot of coordination with them. Maricopa Flood Control District with Bullard Wash coming on down through here. Again, here's Interstate 10. Pebble Creek Parkway, McDowell, so this whole Bullard Wash portion coming in through there, and certainly Lipscomb. Project history, you have that in the staff report, but very briefly, this infrastructure is going to bring about a lot of development in a very short amount of time to the regional mall, certainly, and we're looking at in and around about 3 million square feet of retail as part of this project. As I noted before, largest improvement district in the history of Arizona. And over the past year, we have brought to council a couple different action items. The RFQ for engineering, notice to proceed for Wood Patel, who is our project engineer, doing the construction bidding services and assessment methodology. And a special thanks to J.R. Pooler with Pooled Resources that's working with them on that. And the pre-funding agreements. We've come before council a couple of times on pre-funding to get construction started before we get the bond proceeds, assuming that that does receive council approval, is what's going to happen. The benefits, it gets the infrastructure in fast. Quite frankly, it aligns the different developers or gets them all working together with the city, with our engineering. And it coordinates road improvements. So as I stated before, we're going to have a lot less impact on our motoring public, certainly in and around this area. Still going to be a lot of construction, but it's going to be a lot more, we think, organized. Getting an infrastructure in there, obviously we get the sales tax revenue from the 3 million square feet of commercial building. And one of the most important things about this improvement district is it's not a tax to our citizens. It's not a tax to the city. This will be a tax to those landowners that will be paying the bonds back through their assessment payments. Other benefits are further employment potential and opportunities for residents, certainly to have more goods and services choices here locally. And then we did present to council once before on Bullard Wash, the improvements that are going to be occurring there that will essentially be a regional park that we can use for our citizens and certainly those people that are going to be accessing this area. We think that's a huge benefit to this project. Improvement district formation, just once again, council did appoint an engineer, Wood Patel. We went through a public process, and that was approved by council in January 2006 of this year. Today is a resolution of intention that basically puts the developers on notice and says we are looking at establishing this district, and you will be taxed. Formal approval will come back before council on December 11th, and then finally the bond sale will occur, and we think the proceeds will be available in April 2007. So all this, again, happening very quickly, as we've covered about 9 steps so far in this long process with a couple more to go, and that's a formal approval in the bond sale. With that, I want to bring up our engineer, Pete Hemingway, who's a senior vice president with Wood Patel, just cover very briefly some of the phasing so the public has an opportunity to see what's going on. Thank you, Pete.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Council and Mayor. As Brian mentioned, we'll briefly go over where we are. Certainly want to thank the staff for their support so far in the development community. As Brian's already outlined, this is the general commercial improvement district area. Currently, through efforts in coordination with Suncor, major construction along Pebble Creek Parkway from Monte Vista to Virginia. Just to point out, last week, Pebble will begin construction in December. What we're referring to as Phase 1, I-10 to McDowell from Pebble Creek to Bullard Wash Channel. We did open up bids on that last week. The apparent low bidder is Nesbitt Contracting. We're glad to say they're a little bit lower than our bid, which is a good number for us engineers when the contractor actually wins the bid, which they did. So we're looking at now constructing this phase, which is known as the L, that we refer to it as this improvement right here. That'll be going on from now through December, starting in December, with a completion estimated to be 1st of May of 2007. In the meantime, we're continuing to move forward on the final design plans for what you see highlighted primarily in the green area, which is we're referring to as Phase 2, which will include improvements along Bullard, the rest of McDowell, and completion of Bullard Wash itself as far as the ultimate construction of the park. We will also look at providing phasing each one of these internally to provide access to the power center as early as we can, and also to coordinate with the traffic interchange that we anticipate ADOT to be having also under construction in April of next year. As mentioned before and through a previous council presentation, we're looking at making major improvements and coordinating right now with the development on either side of Bullard Wash itself, taking a tremendous amount of effort with the flood control district as part of the IID. We're primarily constructing from McDowell Road all the way up to the north to the Virginia and Canto Avenue. It also includes construction of 2 bridges, one here along Monte Vista and the other here along McDowell Road. And we're coordinating all these efforts from Virginia all the way through to Interstate 10 along with ADOT and the Department of Transportation. With that, I'd like to turn things over to Keith Hoskins to finish up the rest of the presentation.
Mayor and members of the council, my name is Keith Hoskins. I'm an attorney at Gust Rosenfeld, and we are acting on behalf of the city as bond counsel for this financing. And every time I hear it's the biggest one ever, it makes me sweat just a little. But I think it's going pretty well now. We do, as part of the resolution of intention you're adopting tonight, the engineers have provided us with an engineer's estimate of the plan, of the cost of construction and all the incidental expenses. And the way an improvement district works, that number is the outside limit. That's all you can assess the property owners. If for any reason bids come in higher, you have to either start over or someone has to come up with a difference. So for that reason, we always ask the engineers to not try and be extremely accurate with their number, but to be give us some room just in case. With those numbers, you can see that the construction and right-of-way acquisition and what we are calling the purchased improvements, and those are like where Suncor is going to do the improvements and then we're using bond proceeds to pay them. Or if the work's already going forward, the property owner is paying Suncor and we will use bond proceeds to reimburse the property owner so that once the bonds issue next year. Those total constructions, almost $59 million. The incidental expenses, which is design, review fees, bond counsel, and other incidental expenses, $12 million. and then capitalized interest, which is borrowing the amount of money you need to make sure the interest payments get made from the date you issue bonds until you can start actually billing the property owners, which may be the construction period plus about 6 months after that. Again, just an estimate of what that might be, $7 million, gives us a total of just over $78 million. Bonds will be issued representing the final sizing based on the actual bids. When we get construction bids in, we'll recalculate all this, and as more numbers are known, we will size the issue appropriately to pay the numbers as determined by the bids. The bonds will be issued for 25 years, to be payable over 25 years by the property owners. But the city does need to recall that a bond, an improvement district bond, special assessment, is a contingent liability of the city. If a property owner does not pay their assessment, the city has promised to come to the assessment sale, and if no one else bids, and anyone can come bid at the sale, but if no one else does, the city must bid at the sale. So that's different. You've done a lot of CFDs and I think some special assessments in CFDs, and in a CFD there is no obligation of the city or the district to bid, but in a regular city improvement district there is. I got to press the button again. The resolution of intention has the main purpose of notifying the property owners that the city is thinking of going forward with this. Here's the boundaries, and you've seen the boundary map. Here's the cost, the estimate, the maximum cost, and that engineer's estimate has been filed with the city. Here is generally what we're going to build, and there have been preliminary plans. They're not complete, but preliminary plans showing generally what's going to be built and where it's going to be have been filed with the city. And that allows the property owners, if they chose to object or protest, to know what it was they were objecting to or protesting against. If there are no protests or objections, or if the protests are not sufficient to bar the district, then at the next step, following the hearing on protests and objections in December, we can then decide that if there aren't sufficient protests, we can then move forward. The city can adopt the resolution ordering work, which says, okay, we gave them a chance to object, they didn't object, so let's move forward. In this case, we don't have hundreds or thousands of citizens, residents living in the district. We have only the handful of developers, all of whom have been directly involved with everything we've done. So I would not expect any protests or objections. And I would take it very badly if any of you showed up and did that after all this. I don't have the assessment spread. The majority of the assessment is going on the West Core and Globe property. The greatest part will wind up on the mall site and the power center. They represent certainly the largest amount of area and the largest amount of benefit. Some of the design features they've been designed to take into account the traffic and the needs of the mall in how we've sized the district. So that property is bearing the largest share of the assessment. I think we've gone through kind of the ID formation process. We've identified the area. We know who the property owners are, the identification of the infrastructure and what work we're building. We have the estimate. We've told the landowners in the waiver and consent agreements that you approved on the consent agenda earlier today, we told which property owners what they should expect of the work was going to be assessed against them. We don't have specific numbers, but we say, you know, you're being assessed for these lanes, this curb, gutter, sidewalk, and whatever. So the property owners all know what they're being assessed for, and we're all waiting to get the bids to see what it's going to cost. We've provided for what rights-of-way we need and for getting that dedication. There's one more piece that the agreement will be before you, I think, next week to approve the agreement with the Tang property to get that right-of-way that you need. We've talked about the waiver agreements and the resolution of intention tonight. Let's move on. So what we're asking for tonight is to adopt the resolution of intention. As I said, we filed all the things we need to file before that. We will start giving notice of the resolution. We did find out today that if we did publish this where we were going to in the paper, it would cost $150,000 so that these 4 or 5 people who already know about this district could be notified of it. So we are talking to those property owners to waive the publication and save themselves, in fact, $150,000. And so far, 2 of them have come on board in the last few hours. And I'm expecting to get the others pretty soon. So we won't have to publish, and that will save us that money. I've already covered those other things, so we will be back before you on December 11th to resolve if there are any protests or objections and to ask you to order the work, which is the next step. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other comments from the public? Seeing none, could I ask the clerk to read the resolution by title, please?
Resolution 06-1098 to accept the preliminary plans and an engineer's estimate of cost and expenses of a public improvement and declaring its intention to improve and adopting preliminary plans and engineer's estimate for the improvement of certain streets and rights-of-way within the corporate limits of the City of Goodyear by the construction of certain improvements as shown on the preliminary plans, designating such improvements as the City of Goodyear, Arizona, McDowell Road Commercial Corridor Improvement District, determining that the improvement bonds will be issued to represent the cost and expenses thereof, and declaring the work of improvement to be of more than local or ordinary public benefit, and that the cost of said work or improvement will be assessed upon a certain district, and providing that the proposed work or improvement will be performed under the provisions of Title 48, Chapter 4, Article 2, Arizona Revised Statutes, and all amendments thereto.
Thank you. Could I have a motion, please?
Motion to accept Resolution 06-1098 as read by the clerk.
Second.
Motion from Councilmember Scott and a second from Councilmember Holland. Open for discussion. Councilmember Antoniak?
Just to clarify, you don't need the not to exceed amount read in the motion, or do you? Does it matter? Just the way it was presented to us, it looked like it needed to be. Sorry, I didn't mean to stop Quick Draw McGraw over there. But do you need the not to exceed amount, or no?
I don't
matter?
have one on the
Okay.
resolution.
Okay. That was it. I just saw it on the top of our COAC.
Okay. Councilmember Souza?
Mr. Mayor, there are 3 items in the COAC I think that would be of interest to the residents of Goodyear, and that is that these public improvements will be assessed to, which would be funded by property owners within the ID, which includes Globe Corporation, Westcor, Evergreen Devco, WM Grace, and Tang Realty. In addition, the ID will purchase developer pre-funded improvements constructed by Suncor. As a result, the city will not be assessed. And number 2, the ID represents a contingent liability to the city. Essentially, if any of the assessed ID participants do not make their semi-annual assessment payments, the city would be required to make payments to satisfy bondholder requirements. However, the city would either be repaid by the assessee with penalties or could seek legal action to gain deed to the assessed property. Number 3, we do have an investment at the present time of $228,000. And prior to the formation of the district, this was moved that we hire the engineering firm Wood Patel to begin work on the design and engineering for the public infrastructure. This amount will be refunded to the city when bond proceeds are available, which are tentatively scheduled by April 2007. So in all 3 categories, the city seems to be in a whole situation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Vice Mayor Cavalier.
Aye.
Councilmember Sousa.
Aye.
Councilmember Antoniak.
Aye.
Councilmember Scott.
Aye.
Councilmember Holland.
Aye.
Councilmember Lord.
Aye.
Mayor Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Passed 7-0.
Now move to consider the elected officials' compensation and benefits.
A very long 2 or 3 minute presentation overview for you on this topic. As a reminder, back in April, the Citizens Personnel Committee was formed to review the mayor and council members' compensation and benefits. There was 9 members appointed to this committee, and I know at least one is here. Would you please stand? Beverly deserves an award. She's been at every meeting to date. In May, the council received the committee's recommendations from Chairman Rob Tibbs, who was unable to be here tonight. And the committee's recommendations were brought back before the council in June when they were formally received and filed. And tonight we're bringing back the recommendations listed in your agenda for council action. And if you have any questions, Rourke, Dean, Beverly, and I are here to answer those.
Okay, well, thank you. Do we have any comments from the public? Okay, we have 4 recommendations. The 3rd and 4th do require action this evening. The first 2 do not. One is second. Number 2 is a negative anyway. If we do nothing, it stays the way it is. Right. We don't need to reinforce that, I don't think. Right. And then, and the other one. The city attorney, from the standpoint of economics at least, it recommends that this not be incorporated until the next charter changes are taken to the citizens for a vote, which makes a lot of sense, rather than have a specific charter meeting on this one subject. Okay, let me ask for a motion. Okay, so you want to discuss that, whether we have 1, 2, 3, or 4, or all? How would you want to do that? I think we need 3 and 4 done for sure.
I don't think so.
I agree.
Do we need a motion on anything else? Okay.
Brief question.
Yes, sir.
Just on the city charter, it wouldn't prohibit us from carrying out the intent of the committees, such that we chartered another committee in 2 years' time, such that we kept the spirit of the citizens group going.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, absolutely not. Right. And as you recall, our last meeting, I made the recommendation that as a policy, you could adopt that and reform the committee on a biannual basis if you so chose.
Okay. Okay, then could I have a motion, please?
He doesn't want to make it anymore.
Go ahead, Bob.
Why are you all looking at the young guy
Look at
here?
the young guy.
Yeah,
Make it.
because all right, well, I'll move that we adopt recommendations number 3 and 4 as printed in item 9C.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion from Councilmember Antoniak and a second from Councilmember Lord to implement 3, which refers to ability of the members to participate in the city's health, life, dental, medical, flex spending account and vision plans, and also to provide an increase of $2,000 to the base pay of the mayor, vice mayor, and council members, but this will not be implemented until after the 2007 city elections and only for those newly elected officials. Okay.
Need to read the ordinance.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well, then I guess you don't need my motion on the table then, do you?
It's premature.
Okay.
I'll
I'm
take my
sorry.
motion off the table.
My instructions here are difficult.
Yeah.
Actually, if I read them, they aren't that difficult, Lynn. Good job. Lynn did her job well. Okay. Ask the clerk to read the ordinances by title only, please.
Ordinance 06-1036, establishing compensation and providing benefits for the mayor, vice mayor, and council members of the city of Goodyear.
Is that both? That's for 3 and 4?
Yeah. That's 4.
That's 4. Okay. We don't need it for 3. Is that what you're saying?
Okay, so my motion, I'll read.
It covers both. Okay.
All right. So I move that we adopt ordinance number 2006-1036 as read by the clerk.
Okay. And a motion again from Councilmember Antoniak and a second from Councilmember Lord. Further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Sousa.
Aye.
Councilmember Antoniak.
Aye.
Councilmember Scott.
Aye.
Councilmember Holland.
Aye.
Councilmember Lord.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Cavalier.
Aye.
Mayor Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Passed 7-0.
Okay, we'll now have a public hearing to consider proposed impact fees.
Yeah, can we take 5 minutes? There's about 50 of them out there in the crowd that are going to get up and talk to us tonight.
I know.
I think they can give us 5 minutes.
All right. Let's. Okay, we'll restart the meeting now if we could. I'm going to open a public hearing. Sean Bradford will present. I believe he'll be followed by a short, just completion of an economic analysis report, and then we'll move to public comments. We'll close the public hearing, and then our next action by the council will be on November 27th, which time the council will act on this. So this is the public hearing, and when we get to citizen comments, as I think most of you know, we'd like to ask you to restrict your comments to 3 minutes. And if the comment has been stated earlier, would you just confirm that you agree with the comment, name the person with whom you're agreeing, and we'll move on expeditiously thereafter. I got 15 cards, so it'll be a while. Open the public hearing. Sean Bradford.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I have prepared with staff a brief presentation on impact fees. It is our hope tonight that we can help connect the new growth that we're facing to a demand for service and how that ties back to impact fees. If there is a question that I cannot answer specifically, I'm sure members of staff will be more than happy to come up and answer it on a department-specific question. I'd like to keep this as conversational as possible, so if you do have a question and you want to ask it, feel free to stop me, and I can give it my best shot, and if not, we can call up someone that can answer it. Before I get into the presentation, I prepared just a quick agenda, discuss the methodologies used, our schedule of events to date, staff's recommendation, and then how that ties back with a background, a comparison, breakdown of the fee, its impact on development, and then some of the service requirements that we're facing as we continue to grow. Before I get into my portion of the presentation, I would just like to invite Tom Pippin from BBC Research to come up. He can just give you a brief summary on some of the points that you discussed last month on GRUM and the types of capital spending that we're prepared to undertake. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Mr. Mayor, members of council, Tom Pippin at BBC Research. I spoke to you 2 weeks ago this evening, and tonight we're going to go into a little bit more detail about our methodology, and then I'll turn the presentation back over to Sean, but at any time, please feel free to call on me for questions. One of the concepts that we discussed a couple weeks ago was that impact fees can't pay for the totality of your capital improvement plan. There are other reasons that Goodyear needs to invest in capital beyond what is required by growth. And the slide you see before you starts to talk about that, and it divides your capital projects, and not just in Goodyear, but any local government, into several categories. The first, kind of common sense category, is repair and replacement of existing facilities. Goodyear and every other local government is charged with that responsibility regardless of growth. If you never had another building permit, you'd still have costs in this category. Because they're not related to growth, we can't include them in the impact fee calculations. The next category has to do with betterment of facilities, meaning upgrading your level of service. This is a real mixed bag because there are some cases where you would choose to upgrade your level of service even without growth. And if you were going to do that even without growth, we can't put them in the impact fee calculations. However, there are some, and I'll give more specific examples in a moment, there are some projects where growth is the trigger or the straw that broke the camel's back, if you will. Because of growth, you're going to need a new or different type of infrastructure. Well, in those cases, we can't put all of the cost of the improvement into the impact fee calculations. We have to find a way to split the cost, and I'll show you an example in a minute. Finally, the last bullet reviews a real clear-cut case. If the only reason you're buying or building something is because of growth, and you wouldn't do it otherwise, then we can put all of the costs of those projects in the impact fees. So with that as background, we introduced a concept last week called GRUM. GRUM is an acronym. Okay. GRUM is an acronym for Growth, Repair, Upgrade, and Mixed. I walked through this last week, but I'm going to do it, or 2 weeks ago, but I'm going to do it tonight in a little bit more detail. Knowing that there are some projects that aren't impact fee eligible because they're not linked to growth, we, as your consultant, were given the challenge of determining what can we put in the calculations and what has to stay out. So there are about 150 individual capital improvement plan projects for the non-utility side. That totals around $745 million over the next 10 years. There are about 90 projects on the utility utility side, and that's about $809 million. If you add that together, you get about $1.5 billion of capital improvements that Goodyear's identified over the next 10 years. So the question becomes, how much of that $1.5 billion can be included in the impact fee calculations? In order to determine that, we went line item by line item through all of those CIP projects. We had extensive meetings and interviews and email exchanges with your staff, with your department heads, and we tried to take all of these projects and put them into the GRUM categories. The G in GRUM stands for growth. We asked your staff, is this project designed to maintain your current level of service as growth occurs? We asked them, would you still need this capital project if you weren't growing at all? And if they said no, then we know it's not a G. We know it must have some other assignment. We went through a similar process with R. That's the repair and replacement in GRUM. We asked your staff through these interviews and meetings and email correspondence, is this project related only to fixing what you've got? Would you still need it if you weren't growing at all? If the answer to that was yes, if we found out from your staff that Goodyear would need it regardless of growth, then we knew we could fit it in this category. The U in GRUM stands for upgrade. We asked staff, would this project improve your current level of service? And if they said yes, it would, then we asked them, would you still do it even if you weren't growing at all? And that allowed us to determine if it was an upgrade or if it fell into the last category, M. The M in mix stands for GRUM. So the impression I want to leave you with is that for the 240 CIP projects, utility and non-utility, which total about $1.5 billion, we had this GRUM discussion on each one of them. Depending on the answers we heard, it allowed us then to start getting into the math in terms of what percent of the projects could go into the fee calculations. If we learned that a project was G, it was growth related, then we knew that 100% of that cost could be included in the fee calculation. An example would be new police substations and patrol vehicles that were needed because growth was occurring and you were attempting to maintain a certain ratio of officers per thousand population, which meant you needed new space, new stations, and those officers needed patrol vehicles. If a CIP project was deemed to be R, repair and replacement, 0% of the cost of that was included in the fee calculations. An example would be in the fire CIP, you've got some repairs to existing fire stations, which you have to do regardless of growth. So that wasn't included at all. U, upgrade. If there were some capital projects that we discovered among those 240 we analyzed that were totally related to an increase in your service levels and you were going to do regardless of growth, then we had to take those out of the calculations, the impact fee calculations. And a couple of examples are some things in your general government CIP, and that is monumentation signs at the entrance to the community and a public service memorial. Great things, improving your level of service, but not tied directly to growth. The final category, and you can see by the length of the paragraph, the most involved, is the M, the mixed. These are the projects where growth is the straw that broke the camel's back, or the trigger. You need to invest in one of these 240 projects because of growth, but because existing residents will also benefit, it's not fair to put 100% of the cost into the impact fees. We needed a method to split the cost between how much growth would pay and how much existing residents would pay. We chose as our proxy for that split 71%. As this paragraph explains, this indicates that 10 years from now, 71% of the households in Goodyear don't live here today. So this is indicative of the type of growth that is possible in this community. Examples are the Municipal Training Center and the main library. Growth is the trigger for needing these pieces of infrastructure, but existing residents will also benefit, so we had to use some type of proration. The next two slides go detailed into what I guess I'd call not the math itself, but the symbolic calculation. I'm not going to dwell on this except to say that if we want to get into detailed questions about the formulas, I will come back to this, or Sean can bring me back up. But the point I'd like to make is if you look on the top line, CIP project cost times growth, i.e. GRUM, that's where this analysis I just described to you falls into the equation. Of your 240 capital projects over the next 10 years, which total more than $1.5 billion, we only included in the impact fees the ones that we felt passed that GRUM test. And we did that not only for the non-utility, but the utility as well. Again, I can go in detail through these calculations if there are questions. The only comment I'd leave you with on the utility is that because there are engineering data about system capacity, millions of gallons per day of treatment capacity, we use that, which is very common in utility impact fees. You don't have a similar kind of engineering standard for the non-utility fees. I am going to turn the presentation back over to Sean, who I believe is going to walk you through the path, which, as you know, started with a fee in the high 20,000s for utility and non-utility. And what's before you tonight, staff's recommendation is a fee of about $16,000, which begs the question, how did we get from $27,000 to $16,000? Sean is going to walk you through that process and tell you the steps that we went through.
I just wanted to put up the schedule of events so everyone can see where we're at in the process. It's our intent to come back on the 27th and have council consider a proposed fee adoption, and then that fee would go into effect in March 2007. Just some background. Again, staff worked very hard on this presentation, and we feel it's very important to make the connection that growth pays for growth. Development impact fees are one-time charges applied to offset additional public service costs of new development, and we cannot burden existing residents with this cost. We've also have a goal of trying to maintain the current level of service. That is very difficult given the pace at which we grow as a city. And staff also looks at this as a rolling 10-year plan, similar to our CIP budget, where we go back and review and adjust as needed, whether there's a shift in development, whether it be from a location or a development need. On the utility side of things, state and federal requirements. Safe Drinking Water Act could be changed. They could make a permitting change requirement. So as new sources of supply are put on, there's a higher cost associated with that, whether it be treatment or compliance with regulations. So again, it's an evolving 10-year plan, and it's our goal to go back every 2 years or so and make any adjustments that are needed. Staff is very sensitive to impact to the development community, but for us, cost recovery is essential. We need to, I think our citizens have grown accustomed to a level of service that we all want to maintain, and that does come at a cost, and we want to make sure, and we believe that the items in the CIP that we've identified will allow us to do that. The development community was provided opportunity to discuss. I believe finance held over 7 meetings, and I know we've had as individuals and staff meetings, whether they're sidebar conversations or meetings scheduled to discuss the different issues and to try to work with the development community as best as we could. A question and answer matrix was created, which I think helped. It really produced some good dialogue. The staff did try to remain responsive at all times. We did have a city to run, but as questions came in, we tried to get them answers as quickly as possible. And then also, we believe that the collaborative process resulted in the lower proposed fee. And that's a key point. I think that the workshops and the meetings did help. So to get right down to it, staff's recommendation is an impact fee of $16,439 north of the Gila River and a fee of $17,329 south. That fee is based off of a single-family dwelling unit with a 3/4-inch residential meter. And the reason for the differences is a zonal fee that we're looking at for regional transportation, and we'll get into a little bit more detail on that in a few minutes. So as Tom mentioned, how did we get here? July 27th, the city posted a maximum defensible number of $27,634, again, for a single-family home with a 3/4-inch meter. Based on comments we received, and then we also, in meetings with the developers, reviewed their schedules for absorption and increased development, and staff then reviewed and removed CIP projects. On the utility side of things that I helped lead with the finance department, it was I think it was easier, a little more cut and dry at supply and demand. If the development doesn't come, we do not need to expand facilities. We do not need to add new facilities. So we took a look at what the burden for water supply and wastewater capacity would place on the system, and made adjustments as necessary. So there were some projects that were removed or reduced in scope to facilitate that. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're out forever, but if development, in theory, if development were to stop after this, the impact fees that we have identified would be sufficient to develop a system that would be able to maintain that level of service with water and wastewater. On the non-utility, again, looking at developer schedules, and then we kind of took a look back and on the GRUM analysis, there were some items in there that we removed to make those adjustments. So that brought us from $27,634 to a number that was presented at the October 30 work session of $20,984. So from October 30th to today, the number moved, the impact fee has been adjusted once again, and we wanted to provide you a little bit of detail on what happened there. 4 fire stations were removed, and that was based off of a review with staff and city management on the O&M requirements for fully staffed, fully funded facilities. And again, overlaying demand, the decision was made to remove 4 fire stations. A zonal fee was used for regional transportation, and when we talk zonal fee, it is essentially the Cotton Lane and Estrella Parkway Bridge. The changes that we are proposing were based off of comments we received. The split, we're looking at an 88-12 split that is based off of an engineering analysis that shows that 88% of the development south of the river will benefit from these bridges, where only 12% of the development north of the river would benefit. So that's where the 88-12 split comes from. And then the other item was we removed debt service associated with capital projects. Finance did a bit of a survey internally and talking to other cities. Most communities do not include this in their calculation. And then the other consideration that we took a look at was majority of these projects, especially on the utility side, would be developer funded, and there would not be a debt service component with that. The developer would pay or either through prepayments or would build the infrastructure and then look to receive impact fee credits through a development agreement. So that's how we brought us down to the fee of $16,439. Again, these are just 3/4-inch meters, single family for purposes of apples-to-apple comparison. One of the questions that was brought up in conversations that we've had both internally and externally is the question on the need for services and why we need what we've identified in the plan. And we believe that one of the areas that can point to that is our planning area. The city current incorporated limits is approximately 117 square miles. We have a municipal planning area of 150. Based off of a 2005 census, we have approximately 46,000 people. That would provide us a density of 395 people per square mile. Some of the comments we received were related to how some of the other communities, such as Glendale, can provide service with less facilities. And if you look at Glendale's people per square mile, they're a bit more dense than we are, roughly, we're about 10%, probably a little bit less than that. When you look at some of our other communities like Avondale, Avondale has a density that's 4 times greater than the city of Goodyear today. Just for a reference standpoint, if you were to look at our population of 330,000 people for the 117 that's incorporated, that would give us a density of 2,821 people. So again, we'd have a density similar to Phoenix at full build-out, but we still would not even approach the densities that the city of Glendale has currently or that the city of Tempe has. And I think part of this that we struggle with as a staff is development doesn't come north to south or east to west. It comes where it comes, and we have to provide a service to meet that. It would be nice, and certainly don't want to speak for Harvey, but it would be nice from a utility standpoint if people just continue to move south and we just throw another piece of pipe in and build some more houses and then throw another piece of pipe in. It doesn't work that way. So we need to respond to the development need and build infrastructure where the demand is and provide public service, whether it's through public safety, streets, roads, those type of things. So again, I think the planning area helps answer our questions internally, and we thought that that would be a good slide for Mayor and Council to see. Construction sales tax. That is another question that has been brought up in the past. And this is staff's position. Finance director prepared a white paper, and I believe that that is in your council packet. He can sound much more intelligent than I could, but essentially it's a component of our existing budget. And when we talk about the construction sales tax, I think the issue that's in hand is the incremental rate, the 1.5%. The construction sales tax, I believe, is a 3.5% tax rate, and the incremental rate of the 1.5% over the top is the issue of most concern. That is currently estimated at $6 million. The city looks at that as one-time monies, and I think a point to make is once development and construction starts, city services are utilized. Construction uses our roads, public safety, whether it's police, fire, not necessarily water at first, but as the developments come in, we start to provide water services, those type of things. And if you were to look at when does the city start to benefit from this development, the property tax typically trails construction by about 2 years. And if you were to look at the state shared revenues, that can trail the new construction by up to 6. So there is a bit of a lag there, and city services are being used. I think it's important to point out that in the staff's position on this is that the construction sales tax that we currently collect are being used for projects that are not in the proposed impact fees, and there is no double dipping. These are the fees current versus proposed. Staff has done our best in getting details from other communities, but a lot of this information hasn't been released to the public. So again, using an apples-to-apples comparison, this is a 3/4-inch single-family detached residence, comparing the current fee versus the proposed. Goodyear currently is $9,445. I can't see. $465. We're proposing $16,439 and $17,329 north and south. The presentation that we received from the economist last council meeting brought up that if the city were to have an inequity in place where our fee was exponentially higher than other communities, that could push development away from the city. And based off of the proposed fees that we've received from other communities, our fee falls within line of everyone else. Avondale, I believe, has moved forward, and their council will be voting later this month on a fee of $18,027. Surprise is discussing coming in somewhere between 15 and 18. Peoria is in an RFP process. Queen Creek is making an adjustment based off of a fire fee. And then the city of Phoenix has maximum defensibles that range between 24 and 30. City of Phoenix uses zonal fees. So they have 6 zones, and those are the maximum defensible numbers. Those will be adjusted as staff sees fit. So we just wanted to make the connection that our current fees are in line with existing fees, and our proposed fees, we believe, are in line with proposed fees. So we do not feel that there'll be any inequities that would force development away from Goodyear. Yes, sir.
Question. Just back up to that slide.
I'll try. Which button is it again? There we go.
There's a couple of guys in the back that might be able to help you. Nope.
Right there.
There you go.
Thank you, everybody. There we go.
Just real quick, point of reference. This Queen Creek and, well, not Avondale, but Surprise, do those include water and wastewater, those numbers?
Yes, I believe so.
They do? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. These are some comparisons that we've put together. I apologize for the size of the numbers. I tried to size them and squeeze in as much as I could, but this compares our proposed fees to the existing fees in other communities. We were able to get detail based on the fact that they're public documents for existing fees. We were unable to get the breakdown from our neighbors on their proposed fees. So just for, I guess, an apples-to-apples comparison, this would be our proposed fees if adopted today versus the other communities. On the residential side, for a 3/4-inch meter, Goodyear is fairly competitive with North Peoria and Central Peoria. And again, with Avondale making an adjustment on their 3/4 inch meter to 18,000, that would put them, again, there would not be, in our belief, in inequity. We fall within line of those communities. A 1-inch meter, again, the city uses a multiplier as part of the impact fee calculation, and if I'm sure there'll be some questions later tonight on the 1-inch meters. The city uses a multiplier of 1.7. That's based off of the capacity of a meter, how much water a 3/4 inch can produce. A throughput, how much water a 3/4 inch meter can register versus a 1-inch meter, and that's where the sizing comes in. Again, looking at our neighbors, their proposed fees, we fall within the range of the Peorias and of Surprises, based off of them going through adjustments as we speak. And again, while we're on the upper end today, we believe once those adjustments are made, there will no longer be a large inequity there as well. Same thing, we looked at a residential, a retail, 15,000 square foot facility. And again, we used a 2-inch meter. Not all retail is going to use a 2-inch meter, depending on the usages. But again, just for an apples-to-apples comparison, we feel that the city, again, is relatively competitive. Goodyear North, which is north of the river, with that zonal fee adjustment, our proposed fees are very, very competitive with other cities today, fees that are enacted today. And again, if adjustments are made, the city could be in a position where some of our fees are the lowest, and perhaps that economic balance would swing into our favor and we would see more development because our fees are less. I'm certainly not an economist, but again, supply and demand, it would make some sense. When we look at a 50,000 square foot commercial facility, again, we worked with economic development to try to come up with a standard. What is our atypical retail, atypical commercial? And we did a similar comparison on industrial. Looking at the commercial, again, Goodyear North with the zonal fee, very, very competitive. We start to see the costs associated with the zonal fee when we get into some of our larger facilities. Goodyear South, again, but we do feel that we're in the range of everyone else. And then on the industrial, same thing. The zonal fee comes into play again. You can see there's a large difference between Goodyear North and South, and we'll get into a little bit more detail in a minute on that. But again, relatively competitive, and with a lot of these communities going through rate adjustments, and their proposed rate adjustments on 3/4 should fall in line depending on how they slice their pie. We would expect to see increases here. We're not really sure to what level, but their numbers we would expect would increase as well. I just wanted to provide a brief breakdown of the fee. This is the cost categories that go in the non-utility. Non-utility for, again, a 3/4 inch single-family home would represent $7,440. The regional transportation fee is in bold because that is the difference. That's where we start to see an adjustment made. All of the other fees are the same. And then on the utility side, utility would comprise approximately $9,000 in the 4 cost categories there. That totals $16,439 north. When you get into the south, this is where the regional transportation fee comes into play. The $980 is the maximum defensible number based off of our earlier filings in July. So there we would have a regional transportation fee of $980, which would put the non-utility to $8,330. Again, the utility total stays the same at $8,999. So that would be the breakdown on the $17,329. Just a quick, this is just the Goodyear planning area. If we get any questions tonight on where development is, this is where the city's kind of broken down into some areas. I-10 North, the central planning area, east and west, and then we've got the southern and then the southern planning areas as well. So just wanted to throw that up there. It changes neat colors, and I stole it from economic development. I thought it looked good. I can't do that, so I just wanted to make it look like I knew what I was doing. This is Goodyear today, 2006. We wanted to just give you an idea of the level of service and the requirements that we meet on a daily basis today. Again, current population, somewhere around 49,000, give or take. So in whole numbers, we had a summertime water demand this year of 9 MGD. And on the water side of things, you need to design a system that can meet your max daily demand with storage, and 9 MGD was our number. And that's what we're, in the future we'll be sizing our systems based off of summer demands. We have an average daily wastewater demand of about 4 MGD. Again, just from some points of scale, PD sees approximately 52,000 calls for service on an annual basis. Fire department's 5,100 calls for service. And based off of the number of approved full-time positions and a population of 49,000, we have a ratio of roughly 1 employee per 100 citizens, give or take. So again, just for point of clarification and just to have a discussion. When you look at public safety, specifically fire, we have 4 existing fire stations, 3 in the central planning area and 1 in the southern. Just from some historical data, when you look at calls for service, this is a wonderful graph that Fire provided me. Historically, fire and police from 2003 to 2006 has seen an average increase for calls of service between 15 and 19%. So again, we feel relatively comfortable looking at the growth rates that we're going to be proposing in the next slide. Water, similar growth increases 15 to 20. The last 2 years, we've really seen a large spike in summer demand. As more and more homes are being built, their summertime usage goes up considerably, so we're starting to see a spike there. From a planning standpoint, if we were to assume Goodyear 5 years from today and assume a 16% growth rate, that's the rate that was developed in the study, we would see an estimated population of approximately 103,000 people. Summer water demand would be 19.4, and wastewater demand would be 8.4 MGD. So again, a sizable increase, roughly 10 MGD on the water and more than double on the wastewater, requires a lot of infrastructure, requires trunk lines, requires water mains, reclamation facilities, and wells. We're a groundwater-based system. Public safety, PD, their calls for service and fire departments more than double, again, assuming a linear 16% growth rate, 110,000 and roughly 11,000 calls on the fire. From a planning standpoint, if we were to assume a similar ratio as the city were to continue to grow, we would be looking at 990 full-time employees in 5 years. We believe as the city grows, we'll be able to find economies of scale, use of new technology, whether it be SCADA. I know fire has laptops and police have laptops, and I believe Public Works do. I know we have laptops in our vehicles to try to streamline the process, become more efficient. So we're not sure if that ratio would stay, but from a planning standpoint, if it were to remain the same, we'd be looking at 990 employees in the year 2011. From a fire department standpoint, planned fire facilities, there would be 3, 2 in the central planning area and 1 in the southern planning area. Moving on to 2016, at the end of our rolling 10-year plan, again, I think it's important to note that these numbers, growth numbers, are not cemented in stone, and that's why we will go back and make adjustments as necessary. Historic growth could increase, it could decrease, who's to say? But if we were to assume a linear 16% growth rate, the city of Goodyear would have a population of roughly 217,000 people in 2016. That would be a summer water demand of 40 MGD, a little over 30 million gallon increase from where we are today, and a wastewater demand of 17, more than 4 times. So again, large infrastructure. I didn't want to clutter this slide with lots of information. Regional roads, parks, all of the things that we provide on a daily basis, those would be increased by that amount. And it's to sit back and look at things on a 10-year plan. The city is going to grow tremendously, and we need to be in a position to meet that growth and to meet that need for service that our citizens expect. So again, PD, fire, huge increases in, again, estimated staff over 2,000 if we were to maintain similar ratios. Between 2011 and 2016, we would propose 2 new planned stations, both in the southern planning area. We believe the majority of the growth in the city of Goodyear long-term will occur south of the Gila River, and this would be reflected in this type of planning. I wanted to just throw a few things up here from utility and non-utility, just some of the larger infrastructure pieces that we would need and we've identified in the CIP that will allow us to meet this demand that the new growth has placed on the city. On the water side, very easy for me to speak on that. Adam and Water Company, we've identified the potential of 10 million gallons of brine-free water north of the city. Again, very low cost when you look at it from a O&M component, and then also from a capital. Brine beds, huge cost. If we can save the development community that burden, I think everybody wins. SAT site, that needs to be expanded. As our wastewater capacity grows, we want to try to reuse and recharge as much as we can. reclaimed water system. We've put money in for a very robust reclaimed water system. If we could, replace 30, 40, 50% of our daily water demand with reuse component, that allows us to stretch our resources in the ground for potable use and be able to offset large water uses, whether it's through practice facilities at a new ball field. One of our multiple colleges that I'm sure we'll have in 10 years, they'll probably want grass lawns and those type of things. So I think there's a good opportunity there to help stretch our resources. With new facilities comes regional water and wastewater trunk lines. We've identified where we do need to have treatment. We're trying to find water campuses, trying to find common areas of treatment, economy of scale, treat all the water at one spot, create all the waste at one spot, and we've tried to do that in a few of the water campuses. New wells, wellhead treatment. And then David Iwanski, I don't think he's here anymore, but there's the water rights associated with this new development. You need to have the physical availability of groundwater, which the city is very blessed in the sense that there's large reserves of water underneath the city. It's of questionable quality, and that's where we struggle to try to find better quality water. But you also need to have the legal right to that. You need to be able to legally pump that out. And then there's a replenishment obligation. For every gallon of water that we pump out, we have to recharge a like amount. So that's a huge cost to us, and that's one of the other reasons why we look to develop supplies, even if they're outside the city, that are a lower cost alternative. And then capacity expansion, wastewater treatment plants. As the demand for services increase, you need to have the capacity to treat your wastewater. That's why we've identified 2 expansions at the current one that we're undergoing now, and then a future one at the Goodyear Water Reclamation Facility. In the southern planning area, just quickly, capacity expansions at Corrigan and Rainbow are planned. We're looking at a water reclamation facility, again, a large regional water campus in the southern planning area. That would be the Waterman RO facility. We would develop a southern well field, trunk line, bulk water transfer up to the Waterman site, and then treat it at one location instead of having multiple RO units and multiple, brine disposal, whether through brine ponds or injection wells or whatever, all over the southern planning area. We felt it was best if we look at this from a master plan approach, bring it all into one point. It's easier for the development community to set aside a parcel of land. Granted, it's a little bit larger, but instead of having little pockets everywhere, it's just easier for the development community, and I think it's easier for staff to try to regionalize this. Again, regional trunk lines, new wells, wellhead treatment, and then, again, you develop sources in the south, you have to have the legal right to it, and you have to pay the piper with the replenishment obligation, and those become more and more costly as groundwater sources become more and more scarce in our planning area. On the non-utility, I only do the one arrow to the city center because I know where that's going. I would not want to put an arrow where the Public Works corporate yard is, because if I pick the wrong place, Cato and the Public Works people will probably want to beat me up after the meeting. So wherever they decide to put the Public Works corporate yard or public safety facilities, again, traffic signals, regional roads, storm drainage, we want a library, a justice center. These things are all in the impact fees, and we're going to need to find locations and develop these assets to service our growing community. So those are some of the other areas that some of the other bigger projects that we've identified, just to throw up on a slide so you can get an idea of what we're looking at. That's the end of my presentation. Before I ask Mayor and Council if they have any questions, I would just like to personally recognize Tracy DeSoma. She's done an outstanding job with this. She's been pulling her hair out the last couple of weeks where we keep making adjustments, and I want to thank her. Without her effort, I would have just been up here for 5 minutes not saying much. So, Tracy, thank you very much for your effort. And at that point, I'd open it up to any questions Mayor and Council or the public would have. Thank you.
Do you have a report from the economic analysis?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry. At this point, I'd like to turn it over. We're going to get a final report on the economic impact that was presented to Mayor and Council on the 30th. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Rick Merritt. I'm with Elliott Pollock and Company in Scottsdale, Arizona. And we provided you a quick, incomplete summary about 2 weeks ago on some of the issues we were looking at. And we'd like to finalize some of the findings that we came up with. I'd like to apologize that Elliott cannot be here tonight. He had a long-standing commitment to be out of town. but he has been intimately involved in this presentation. There's one other thing I need to identify is that we were thrown a little late last week by the fact that there were new fees that are being introduced. And so our presentation is based on the fees prior to last week. So there is some change. Fees are going down, that's good, but we will have some different conclusions regarding where you stand in terms of the competitive environment. In the previous presentation, we focused on the economic principles and how each of the real estate industries contribute to the City of Goodyear economy. What tonight we want to look at more in terms of is tax revenue and the impact on employment, potential losses that could occur in an uncompetitive environment. Just to reiterate some, the expected home builder and developer behavior that we generated based on interviews is that there are many alternatives to developing Goodyear. There is little distinction or market differentiation between the various cities on the west side. And that's from the perspective of all the interviewees we talked to, the commercial developers, the home builders, corporate tenants, and business owners. And as a result, most of them felt that higher rents and home prices could not be justified if the fees are enacted in at the size that were being proposed just a week or so ago, and that absorption in all real estate sectors would likely slow. There's also a concern with the perception or reputation as a high-cost community and what that can mean to the city's economy. I can tell you that the first people that developers, business owners, corporate tenants go to when they come to an area to either relocate or develop, they go to the brokers. And the brokers are going to be the first ones to say, you don't want to develop in this particular community. They cost more. Just stay away from them. Here's where you want to go, and they'll point to other cities. Now, we did go back and look at impact fee comparisons because we were able to get some fees that we didn't have last week, like the Avondale proposed, which is the fourth row down there. And we all know about the single-family fees, and that's what most of the conversation is about. However, what we found is that the multifamily fees are way beyond even Avondale's proposed. As you can see, about $14,000 per unit for the Goodyear proposed and about $9,800 for the Avondale proposed. And beyond that, every other fee is much, much lower than this. Now, these fees, I don't know what the impact is of the new changes, revisions, but this is what it was a week ago. And you can see it as a significant impact that will really have a long-term impact on the city in terms of creating multifamily housing. I'd also like to just clarify that in your memo tonight, you'll see that the City of Phoenix is shown as enacting fees ranging from $24,000 to $30,000. Those are old fees that go back a long ways. The new fees, as you can see, are really for North Phoenix or in the mid to high teens, something like that. You can see in Phoenix, the proposed for Levine, Estrella North, and Estrella South villages are all very, very competitive, under $10,000 per unit for single family and well below that for the multifamily. And these are the proposed fees that will be enacted later in 2007 through a phased-in process. I'd also like to add that from what I understand in reading the latest memo that came out to you, that multifamily housing is shown in your report as having a $22,000 per unit fee. We believe that is incorrect, that they've assigned a 1-inch meter to every multifamily unit. Multifamily units, there's 15, 20 units on a 2-inch meter, and that brings down the fee to what we show here at about $14,000. So I think there are some adjustments that need to be made in your report. When you look at the multifamily fee and how it impacts a multifamily development of 200 units, it adds, when you add the sales tax in, which is higher than most cities, about $3.1 million, or about 22% of the cost of a multifamily complex. And the next closest is the Avondale proposed at $2.2 million. So you're almost $1 million higher just in cost compared to the Avondale proposed. Once again, this is a significant impact that will harm the city's attempt to have a broad base of housing. You've talked tonight about wanting to get a college or university here. You're going to need affordable multifamily housing, and these types of fees are not going to get you there. We also looked at the retail impact fees when you apply it to a particular building, and once again, comparing to Avondale proposed, and what we came up with is $1 million more in impact fees and sales taxes here in Goodyear proposed. Once again, your fees are coming down. I don't know exactly how it affects the commercial development. But once again, we're showing about 15% of construction costs in just fees in the Goodyear proposed. In office, there's not a whole lot of difference, although once again, you are the high-cost provider. And the next lowest, once again, is the Avondale proposed, $519,000. Industrial impact fees is a 200,000 square foot warehouse building. And once again, more than double the Avondale proposed fee, $1.1 million for the Goodyear proposed as of a week ago. So once again, we have some significant concerns about these fees. I don't know how the new proposal affects us. Economic implications. What we did was take a look at your projections that are in the report and came up with assumptions on how we believe that the market would behave, based on interviews and economic principles, things like that. In your proposal or in your report, about 36,000 residential units would be built over the next 10 years, 4.5 million square feet of retail, 1.4 million square feet of office, and 1.9 million square feet of industrial. And we assumed, now this is a fairly conservative assumption because several home builders told us, well, the single-family market is going to drop by 50%. We don't believe that's going to happen, and it's very difficult to determine how much it's going to drop, but we don't believe it's going to be anywhere near there. But lost absorption, if you lose 10% of your single-family housing over the next 10 years due to these fees, the revenue loss is $35 million. If you lose 20%, it's $70 million. And these are big numbers. These are some of the biggest numbers in our report because you have construction sales tax, which is extensive for single-family housing. We included retail sales that new residents coming here would spend their dollars in the city. State shared revenue is a huge number as well. These are our actual spreadsheets, and the only thing I really want to refer to beyond that for a 10% decrease in absorption of residential single-family units is there'll be a loss of 1,800 construction jobs. And if it's a 20%, there'll be a loss of about 3,600 construction jobs related to the single-family projects. Multifamily scenarios, we assumed that there would be lost absorption of somewhere between 25 and 50%. We believe probably if these types of fees, if there's that much of a disparity, that the loss of absorption would probably be towards the 50% range, if not more. And you can see the revenue loss. And once again, the construction impact, loss of jobs, is 200 to 400 jobs, something like that. Not real huge numbers. In retail, lost absorption of somewhere between 25 and 50%. This is a little bit difficult to put a finger on. We believe it could potentially be between these two numbers, and the revenue loss is between $37 and $74 million. And job-wise, you're losing 3,600 jobs if you lose 25% of your retail, and upwards of 7,200 jobs if you lose 50% of your retail. In office, the losses are much smaller because of a much smaller base of new development. Lost absorption at 50% is $5.3 million, rather small numbers, although if you lose 25% of your employment base, that means that about 2,500 people are not going to be accommodated in office buildings in your community. And if you lose 50%, you're losing 50,000 jobs that could be accommodated by that office development. Or 5,000 jobs, excuse me, not 50. In industrial, small numbers again because industrial really brings you very little revenue. But we believe that the lost absorption of 50% is probably closer to what could happen if if there's a big disparity. And once again, you could lose industrial space that could accommodate somewhere between 1,200 and roughly 2,500 jobs, somewhere in that range. And just in summary, real quick to go through, once the revenue is lost from any real estate sector, it's not recoverable. If a tenant decides not to build or rent here and decides to go elsewhere or decides to go or wait and come back in 2 years, that increment of revenue that you lost is lost forever. We think that there's a potential in talking to the retail developers that major retail, large community, and regional retail have the greatest risk of being diverted out of the city, locating on your borders, creating sales tax leakage. There'll be job losses in all retail sectors. And what we believe is that, for the most part, is that Goodyear is forcing rising prices, particularly in the home building market, in a declining market. This is a quote from one of our real estate brokers. It really is an impact as the builders are trying to stabilize the market. Prices are going down, and now we have rising impact fees going. Competition. You do not want to be the highest cost leader. This is probably the most important issue before you tonight. There are 29 cities in Maricopa and Pinal County that form most of the metropolitan area. The reason the area functions real well and there's great job growth is because there's competition. There's cities out there wanting retail development, wanting jobs. And if you are the high-cost leader, you're going to be on the losing end of getting those jobs in that retail. And last thing that Elliot wanted me to impart for sure is that this is an economic development issue and it is a competitive issue. And the competition will use the cost of your fees against you. And therefore, if you're the first one out with the highest fees, you're going to be the target of everybody else that follows behind you. That's all I have for tonight. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
That's the end of my presentation. At this point, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions Mayor and Council have or the public.
Okay, the purpose of this evening is to receive the input from you and from the public. Before we do that, just to be fair to the Council, are there any questions that you prefer not waiting until the 27th to ask as a result of what you've just heard?
Well, I just have
Yes.
one. Since we didn't bring out tonight, Sean, about the single-family, multi-family breakdown.
I'm sorry?
We didn't talk about that from your presentation, the single-family, multi-family.
No, we didn't. We just showed a 3/4-inch meter versus a 1-inch. Staff can take a look at that and make some calculations and get the information to Mayor and Council prior to the 27th.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Sean, what was the rationale for moving 4 fire stations?
I think staff looked at it from an O&M standpoint and what we could afford from a funding and staffing level. We felt we could not afford the 9 that was proposed, that we can afford and fully staff 5.
Okay, because of O&M?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Scott.
Is it only because of O&M? Because if we were told a while back that we needed these 4 stations to maintain our 4-minute response time, then it seems very logical if you take them away, we're not going to meet this 4-minute response time, and that means that growth, if we can carry this one step further, growth may very well be interfering with quality.
That's a very good question, and at this point I'd like to invite the Chief up to answer that.
We can't do that now.
No.
I'm sorry, I couldn't answer that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to.
But certainly the opportunity will exist in 2 weeks to do that. Just, Sean, you need to be prepared in 2 weeks to confront
Absolutely.
the economic analysis numbers.
We will.
And Sean, congratulations on your presentation. It was
Thank
very
you.
well done, very professional. Thank you.
I had a lot of help.
Good.
I was just going to ask for a copy of that last presentation and the tables that were included in it. If that could get distributed to all of us, that would be handy just to reflect on.
Not a problem. And we'll prepare a response.
Who's paying Elliott Pollock? Is it us or the developers?
It's the developers.
Okay.
And I think it's important. Elliot, you brought up a good point that there is a disparity in costs. We believe that disparity with our recent adjustments no longer exists. and we'll perform an economic analysis to see if that's true, and we'll answer the question on the multifamilies. That's a good point.
Especially those from the Phoenix area?
Yes. We called Phoenix and we called Avondale. We weren't able to get any additional information, so I'll have a sidebar with the economist and see if I can get some of his raw data, and we can look at those numbers as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The disparities are pretty glaring.
Yes.
Come up with that figure.
Okay, we'll now move. We have 15 persons who wish to speak, and we'll start with Gary Myers.
Mayor Kavanaugh, members of the council. My name is Gary Myers with Standard Pacific Homes. Our offices are at 6710 North Scottsdale Road, Scottsdale, Arizona. I want to thank the members of the council that took time last week to speak with me or meet with me. And I think staff's done a good job of incorporating a lot of the information that we've given them in the last couple of weeks into the recent number. As one of the 16 members of the initial development group in the West Goodyear planning area, we've been through all the numbers. For a year and a half, we've designed the infrastructure out there. We know the estimated costs, and I think those have been incorporated into the new numbers, and we're pretty confident with the utility fees at this time. Still have some issues with the non-utility driven numbers, and I think Sean probably knows that this one's coming too, but the disparity between the 1.7 multiplier and the 1-inch meter is also an issue for us, as that drives up the cost for that 1-inch meter in residential homes to the $27,000 range that initially came out for the 3/4 in the BBC study. That's really all I got at this time. I think we have a lot more people that are going to expand on that stuff, so if there are any questions, I'll take them. If not...
We're just taking your input today.
Good enough. Thanks.
Thank you. Michael Martindale. I'm sorry, Michael Martindale. Rachel Aja.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I'm representing the Home Builders Association of Central Arizona. We're located at 3200 East Camelback in Phoenix. It's 85018 zip code. And I've said before and want to reiterate, we really appreciate the process that the city has allowed us to be involved in throughout this timeline. We do still have some questions. We hope that they'll be as accessible to us between now and the final adoption date as they have been. For example, in the handout tonight, the YMCA numbers are still involved in the study, which we believe had been talked about being removed because that's not a city service and shouldn't be involved in impact fees.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that. Which do you want excluded?
In the community facility section, the YMCA cost. And other questions of that nature. But we just ask that staff continue to be accessible to us to answer those questions so that when it comes to final adoption, we do have the answers that we need to be able to stand up here and agree or disagree with what they're saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
There we go. The YMCA number was printed this evening. That was a mistake, and that has been removed.
Okay, thank you. Bruce Hilby. David Mallon.
Good evening, Mayor Kavanaugh, council members. David Mallon with Vestar Development, 2425 East Camelback Road in Phoenix. I think it's important when looking at deciding whether or not you want to raise these impact fees to the levels that you're talking about, to draw upon some experiences that have happened right here in the Valley. And you have to look no further than looking at, as kind of a case study, the city of Peoria. Peoria, back in early 2000, had unusually high impact fees. And how that affected the retail sector is literally there just was no retail construction at all. All of the projects were being built in neighboring communities such as Glendale. It was about 2002 that these impact fees were brought back in line with other cities and towns in the Phoenix metropolitan area. And what you see today as a result of that, as a case in point, right at the intersection of Lake Pleasant Parkway and Happy Valley Road, there's retail construction on all four corners that amounts to in excess of 1.5 million square feet of construction. And all of that was the fact that there was no retail construction for a time there versus why there's construction now is clearly, from our perspective, related to the impact fee. Our project that we're planning out here in Goodyear is at the northeast corner of Cotton Lane and Yuma Road. And I want to be very clear with you that we have not closed on that property. We have an option to purchase that property. And we have been working for in excess of 3 years on that project based on certain assumptions out here. One of those assumptions is the level of the impact fee. At the levels that you're proposing to increase those fees, that causes us to look very clearly, very closely at the bottom line, at those numbers. One thing I'd like to point out to you that you may not realize is when you look at a study such as Elliott Pollock's study, where he compares your impact fee to other municipalities in Phoenix, our clients, our customers, are the national tenants for the most part. We do have some independents in the project, but the majority of our customers are national chains. And these national chains, they determine their growth strategies. They determine 3-5 years in advance how many stores they want to open each year over the next 3 to 5 years. That is predetermined. They set that in advance. And when they do that, they are sitting in a boardroom in wherever their hometown is, and they're only looking at the bottom line. And so Goodyear is actually up against Albuquerque, New Mexico, or Denver, Colorado, or Seattle, Washington, when a PetSmart or a Target store decides whether or not to open in the city of Goodyear. And that impact fee will play a large role, that increased fee, in that bottom line. So I urge you to take that into consideration, and I appreciate you allowing me to speak at this hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Buzz Slavin, please.
Good evening, Mayor Kavanaugh and council members. I'm Buzz Slavin. My address is 2198 East Camelback Road in Phoenix. I want to make a couple of observations based on some of the comments that your paid consultant made as well as your staff presenter. First of all, it looks to me at least that if you go out 10 years and you all of a sudden come up with a 71% new growth figure, I think it tends to skew the development impact fee much higher in favor of new growth. I think it makes sense in a high growth community to perhaps look more like a 5-year to begin with. I would like to suggest to you that you have them look at a 5-year period just to see what the difference might be between the 5 and 10 year in terms of what you would place on future growth as compared to current growth. The other observation I would also like to make with you, and I think I heard this correctly when Sean stated the purpose for not including the construction sales tax. This is my understanding of the syllogism that was presented to you this evening. Construction sales tax is not expended on capital improvements. Development impact fees only may be used to pay for capital expenditures. Therefore, construction sales tax will not be offset against development impact fees. I think that's a syllogism that you were presented. If that is the case, that's a classic circular reasoning begging the question notion as far as whether or not construction sales tax ought to and should be taken into consideration. It's a one-time contribution that new residents make to your community. The same thing when you are charging a one-time fee for new residents to pay to move into your community. That sales tax gets included in the price of the house. And therefore, if you don't think that's not double dipping, then maybe I'm just not understanding the process. One final thing I'd like to point out. I did deliver some legal memorandum and a letter today. Apologize for it being here so late. I gave extra copies to Rorik Massey for all of you if you would care to look at it. But it sort of gives you a lot of the case law, the underpinnings of what you're taking into account and consideration in looking at these development impact fees. One final point, that the clients for whom I speak totally back the Valley Partnership's suggestion that there be a private-public partnership task force. Those of us who have spent a lot of time in development impact fees analysis would love to come and have further face time with Sean, among others, and your consultants to kind of more closely examine some of the things that have been presented here this evening. So one final thing, they've worked very hard, and I know they need to be complimented in every sense of the word. This is tough stuff, and it doesn't come easy for a lot of people. So I've been studying it for over 10 years of my career. I can tell you it takes a lot of time. So my compliments to your staff, and we hope we can work together to come up with the best possible solution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Greg Alpert, please.
Mayor Kavanaugh, members of the council, my name is Greg Alpert, Evergreen Development Company, 2390 East Camelback Road, Phoenix, Arizona. Evergreen is the developer of about 200 acres on the east side of Estrella, bounded on the north by McDowell and on the south side by Van Buren. Our development, when complete, will offer about 500,000 square feet of retail, 300,000 square feet of office, 1,500 dwelling units. A lot of that you saw in a PAD that was approved unanimously a couple weeks ago, and we appreciate very much your support. We have made a significant investment in Goodyear, and we will continue doing so for many years. We've run some numbers on our development, and by our calculations, we will spend $350 million, plus or minus, in construction over the next several years to build out this development. I know that it's tough for developers to get a lot of sympathy. I'm sure there are a lot of developers in the room that have never made a dollar on any of the developments that they've done, and it's rough to absorb impact fee increases. But I hope to change the perception just a little bit and avoid the bell. A project like ours has an enormous economic impact. The fees that are proposed will impact our development enormously too. Under the current impact fee schedule, we anticipate roughly $14 million of fees. Under what is proposed, and this was based off of the $20,000 a unit model, and so I think it's gone down about 20%. But we were going from $14 million to about $35 million, so maybe today the number's $30 million. But that is an enormous increase to try and absorb somewhere into pro forma, and it just isn't possible to do that. As a private developer, we get to decide what the timing is of when we're going to develop our projects, and I think it goes without saying that we're not going to do a development unless we know that we stand to make a profit. The area of Goodyear where we are doing our developments is it's a special area. There's the Estrella overlay. There's a lot of interesting things that are planned down to the new city center and the stadium, and we think that we will make a very important contribution to that. But with the fee increases that are proposed, it is going to affect our timing enormously. This week we break ground on Goodyear Centerpoint, which is our power center on the north side of the freeway. But we still have roughly 150 acres on the south side of the freeway to develop, and the timing of that with these kinds of fee increases is very uncertain. Last, I'd like to point out that there's a symbiotic relationship that exists between all of these different things that you've heard about. We have office in our development. I didn't avoid the bell. We have office. Office needs retail. Retail needs the housing. Community colleges needs affordable housing and multifamily, and the city needs good developments like ours to improve the quality of life for the citizens and to generate construction sales tax and other types of revenue that will keep giving forever, like retail sales tax. And we're happy to be here. We look forward to making an important contribution to your city and hope that we can work with you on some fees that are reasonable and will help promote the kind of developments that we're trying to do, not hinder them. Thank you.
Thank you. Grady Gamage, please.
Mayor, members of the council, thank you very much. My name is Grady Gamage, Jr. My address is 2 North Central in Phoenix, and I'm here on behalf of Valley Partnership and a group of about a dozen to 15 developers who have sent you one letter, and then I followed that with a letter from me. We want to thank you for coming down from $27,000 to $16,000, but I got to tell you, I feel kind of like we're playing deal or no deal, and all Sean lacks is the earring. This isn't really, well, the goatee is there. And this isn't really the way this ought to work. We don't want to be in an ad hoc negotiation about what should the impact fee be based on is it going to hurt development or not. There's a statutory process you're supposed to follow here in terms of calculating and assessing the impact fee. And just let me give you one example of something that you're missing in that process. You remember back in the analysis that the consultant explained to you, you took and split 30% of the cost of many of these things in the mixed category back onto existing residents. Well, how do they pay those? They don't pay impact fees. They pay them because they pay taxes. They pay sales taxes, they pay property taxes, they pay user fees. Well, all the new residents moving in pay the same taxes. They pay the same property taxes, they pay the same sales taxes, and they pay the same user fees, but they had to bear all of their 70% cost in the impact fee. You can't do that. You double hit them. It is statutorily required under the ARS statute, section B4, that you have to apply offsets for all the revenue coming from those new residents that's just like the revenue coming from the old residents, and yet that's nowhere in this methodology. I don't know how much it is, but the method you're using suggests it might be as much as 30%, meaning that this impact fee is 30% higher than is statutorily supportable under the Arizona revised statutes. Now, that's just one example of a bunch of stuff that's wrong here. We can't fix it in time. So as I said in the letter to you, our suggestion is let's negotiate a percentage increase. And let's apply it for 12 months or 18 months, whatever it needs to be. We understand the fees are going to go up. We understand they need to go up. We don't want business to stop in Goodyear. We want you to keep growing. But after we negotiate that, we need to put in place an ongoing process that you can use year after year after year, a methodology that remains consistent, that gets applied every time, that's transparent so the public can understand it and we know what's going on. We suggested the appointment of a public-private task force to do that. We suggested the mayor should chair that. We thought that was presumptively the most credible person to do it, to make sure that we're not in this deal or no deal thing every single time you need to negotiate your new impact fees. That's our suggestion. We thank you very much. We think the existing process doesn't work, and as of tonight, it's no deal. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Blake, please.
Mayor Kavanaugh, members of the council, for the record, my name is Tom Blake with Taylor Woodrow Homes, 6720 North Scottsdale Road, Scottsdale. And we too, as Gary mentioned earlier, Taylor Woodrow is also a member of the West Goodyear Planning Area, one of the 16 property owners there. Real briefly, obviously you're hearing tonight on some of the things we've talked about. We too would like to thank staff very much for being so accessible and willing to work on this, and we appreciate the work to date. In a nutshell, we're hoping that the single-family fees we won't address the retail or the office, obviously, that's not our bag, but the single-family, in a nutshell, we're hoping that those can continue to come down without, and our belief is they can be done without hitting the fire or police or the utilities, and that there's some work and some suggestions that the staff has on our behalf, and hopefully we can continue to look at those. Real briefly, though, on the competition, what I did want to hit was clearly the studies in terms of who are we competing with for residents when we're selling homes. It's the other communities in the Southwest Valley. It's Buckeye. I think there was no discrepancy on the impact fee there. It's the $7,400 and change. Phoenix, Surprise, and Avondale. Surprise, I wanted to clarify as well, the range was $15,000 to $18,000. There's a study that was done by Tischler that was as of November 1st, that actually in SPA 1, which is the area just north of Goodyear, that goes all the way up to Grand Avenue, all the property along the 303. The latest fee is $11,812. Not the $15,000. And again, I'm not knocking staff. It very well might have started at the $15,000 to $18,000. But again, they're going through the same process. So you guys are kind of fighting a moving target with some of these other cities, is my point. And just because their proposed fees at one point were 15 to the 18, for Surprise, it's now 11,812. And there's a report to back that up by the consultant equivalent that you have here. And in Phoenix, rather than guess, if all you need to do is on Wednesday at 3 o'clock, the council in Phoenix is voting on adopting the fee in the two-phase deal, and it is, at least per staff's recommendation, in the 6 zones that are south, including Levine, which you'd compete with directly. It's between $7,264 and $10,822. And again, rather than guess, you can get staff to go to that. They can get you the information, and you'll have it effective Wednesday, so you'll know. So far you're dealing with Buckeye, $7,400, Surprise, $11,800, and Phoenix, the south section, up to $10,800. So Avondale, you're right, they are just proposed at this point, and they are the higher amount, but again, rest assured they're going through that process as well. So the other thing I wanted to just echo was Gary's comment on the 1-inch meters. I think we've talked to several of you, and staff knows how we feel. We're hoping that some multiplier at a lower amount would come of this thing and encourage a bigger product as opposed to discouraging it, which I know is counter to what you're trying to accomplish. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Eric Lauren, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. My name is Eric Lauren. I am a professional engineer. I work for Cohen Van Loo Consultants. We are located in Phoenix at 4550 North 12th Street. Thank you for the opportunity tonight to comment on the proposed utility impact fees, and especially the capacity ratios between the meters, 3/4 inch and 1 meter size. We believe that the 1.7 ratio, which has been proposed, is high, very high, and we do so for the following reasons. An infrastructure, sewer, water, treatment plants are sized on the basis of unit flow factors and population that are assigned by these unit flow factors. So that, for instance, for a water infrastructure, the city of Goodyear requirement is 470.5 gallons per day per dwelling unit. That multiplied by the number of people per dwelling unit, also that including the fire flow requirements, is what sizes the infrastructure, water, the water sources. A 3/4 inch meter house or 1 inch meter house actually uses really very similarly the same amount of water. Same for sewer. For sewer lines that are greater than 12 inches, we are asked to design it on the basis of 105 gallons per capita per day times 2.5 people per unit. And we peak those flows on a formula that is known as the Harmon factor, which takes into account the number of population. The greater the population, the less the peak. So what we propose is to reduce that 1.7 to perhaps 1.3. And I use 1.3 because in looking at the data that was supplied to us, 1.27 is what Surprise is currently using as a differential between 1.75 and 1 inch. That concludes my presentation, but I do want to thank staff and the city for all the many years of cooperation and proactivity, and also Sean for a good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Philip Miller, please. Philip Miller. Jay Ellingson.
Mayor, members of the council, Jay Ellingson, Suncor Development, and for purposes of tonight, 80 East Rio Salado Drive, Tempe, and kind of a combined effort in terms of what we would like to say in reference to this discussion. It's interesting. This is, I think, the fourth time that Suncor has gone through this process. And each time the process begins high and then comes down, with the reality in terms of checking what the surrounding communities have to offer. It's interesting, so that I'm not redundant in the comments, it would be nice to finish the process for once so that we can come up with a procedure that meets the statutory requirements of the state. We have never finished that. We have compromised. We've come to something that's acceptable to all parties, and then we leave it there, and then 2 years later we come back to the same issues and arguments. It's never been challenged. It's not been in anybody's interest. But we're getting to the point in everybody's growth and maturity in terms of the city, the stakes that are represented, that we need to finalize the process and make sure that it is complete. I hope that we can do that this time so that we don't raise the same issues in the next 2 years when the impact fees are needed to be looked at to see if they are relevant to what's being represented in your capital improvement programs. We're a captive audience, unlike some of the other people that have stated their position tonight. We have been here. We are going to continue to be here with our developments. We think that what we have added to the cities over the year have been to your benefit and our benefit also. But it really would be in your interest, our interest, and the collective interest of everybody representative to conclude the process correctly this time. If we need to raise it temporarily, that's fine. We want you to move on. We don't want to impact your ability to provide the services, but we need to conclude the process. Thank you.
Thank you. David Scholl.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is David Scholl. I'm with Westcor. Our address is 11411 North Tatum Boulevard in Phoenix, Arizona. Excuse me. I'm not going to repeat a lot of what you've heard out of respect for your time. I do want to focus a little bit just on the competitive nature. As you know, we're involved in almost 400 acres, which we hope someday to be a very big mixed-use core for your town. We started that process almost 9 years ago, and at the heart of that will be what we hope will be a super regional shopping destination. The very nature of that type of destination and the types of tenants that frequent that destination really requires us to be on a now 9-year romancing period with those key tenants. And the hope is that we can guide them to see the trade area that they are trying to get involved with reach a certain point of size at the same time as a grand opening or their opening for business. We need those two actions to converge at the same time. A large enough trade area to support a super regional destination. There's been enough said already tonight on the impact on the retail development itself, but I think one of the things that's near and dear to our heart is the actual trade area maturity. If we're going to see the number of people it takes to support the opening date that we're aiming at, we need those homes to be developed. Those homes are going to have people in them that need jobs and the amenities that this community needs to offer. All of that together makes a community's fabric something special. And it's our worry that, not just the impact on retail, but office, housing, schools, other amenities, employment could all be impacted by this, and all of that have a trickle-down effect on the maturity of a trade area, which we really need to see. I would encourage you to take advantage of the many offers that you've heard tonight, and rather than have a date in mind to just have this be behind you, I would hope that you would consider all of the competitive aspects that are so necessary for our project and the fabric that you're trying to weave out here, and take the necessary time, take up Valley Partnership on their offer to work this out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Fred Stiles.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Fred Stiles with EJM, 7419 East Helm Drive in Scottsdale. We also own about 400 acres of land at the southeast corner of Bullard and I-10, which is in the employment corridor. And I just want to take 1 second or 1 minute to talk to you a little bit about industrial, which we know a little bit about. We have a little over 5 million square feet of industrial buildings here in Phoenix, consisting with over 300 and some tenants in it. And we're just finishing up a project in Tolleson and one down in Chandler, with another one scheduled in Phoenix here shortly. And so I happen to do have the current City of Phoenix impact fees for what this project would be. And it's a 260,000 square foot, 3-building complex. And the fees in Phoenix are under the new proposed fees, they're going to be $260,000. Whereas the fees in Goodyear, the new proposed fees, even the lowered ones, will be $1,040,000, a $780,000 disadvantage. There's an addition. So anyway, the fee in Phoenix is going to be about $1 a square foot. It's actually a little less than that. Depends on where you are in the city from I-10 and a few other variations. And Phoenix has about 2,500 acres of undeveloped industrial land. And Tolleson has about 700 acres of undeveloped industrial land. And Tolleson's current fees are $1.09 a square foot. So yes, the city of Goodyear has a big disadvantage on impact fees when it comes to industrial. We're all in favor of paying our fair share, and we've done that in every project that we've developed for industrial fees, and we will continue to do so. But we just want to make sure that we do pay our fair share and not somebody else's. The one thing I did notice in the revised fee schedule that we got tonight was that where'd I go? Yeah. Just using the north zone, I guess you call it, the industrial was increased 158%, office 30%, and retail 64%. Just like Mr. Scholl said, every commercial aspect, including residential, is needed to make the city grow. But it's the one that creates, or one that generates the least amount of rent, industrial, is being hit with the greatest percentage increase. It just doesn't make any sense to me. That in dollars, it's going, industrial is increasing by $2.35 to $3.66 a square foot. It's way more than any of your competitors. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Suzanne Gilstrap, please.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, my name is Suzanne Gilstrap. My office is at 815 North First Avenue in Phoenix. I'm here tonight in representation of the Arizona Multi-Housing Association, which is a statewide trade association for the rental housing industry. I, too, would like to offer an expression of gratitude for the way that staff has worked with us you're certainly moving these fees in the right direction. We, like many of the speakers before us, would like to see them continue to drop, and we believe there's justification for that. Having said that, in addition to the sheer magnitude of the increase, and for multifamily, I think it's 135%. That's a whopping big increase to try to absorb in 1 year. And also, we have some concern with the level of service. We, like speakers before us, have concern as to the proportionment of fees or expenses to existing residents versus new growth. The apartment industry is equally concerned about equity between land use classes. Your current fee structure at least attempts in some way to recognize that there's a difference in the burden that's placed on city infrastructure by multifamily versus single family. Under the current fee structure, we have a lower rate in every category. Similar to the way that they have structured commercial, where in commercial you have differential rates for retail and for office and for industrial. Under the new proposed rates that your consultant has given you, we're removing any resemblance of equity that might have existed. The fees for multifamily and single family in the non-utility categories, with the exception of transportation, will be 1-to-1 ratio, as opposed to multifamily paying some differential to single family. If you adopt this fee, you'll be the only city in the West Valley that does not give a differential fee to multifamily in all categories. So basically what you've done is you've gone from a fee structure that at least provided some equity among classes of development to one that essentially provides no equity for subcategories within the residential category, or for that matter within the commercial as well. And I'd just like to say that there's been a lot of discussion tonight about, gee, you're going to have fees higher than any other city. I think it's more than that. I haven't heard one person talk about affordability of housing. And I think that's the primary public policy issue that has to be considered as you go forward with these development fees. You cannot continue to ratchet up the price and force people out of the ability to have decent housing. Thank you.
Thank you. That's my final card. Have I missed any? Pardon me?
May I take my turn now?
Yes, sir.
Mayor, Council, I'm Bruce Hilby. My office at 2198 East Camelback Road. And I'd just like to sum up what we heard tonight with regard to the offer that the development community is making regarding working with the city and with staff. I think what's being proposed is a partnership between the city and the development community that would look at an issue broader than just the development impact fees, and that is really to look at your cost of development element, which, as has not been mentioned tonight, but has in Buzz's letter to you, does not yet conform to the statute. And in this overall look, I think we need to look at more than just the development impact fees, but all the different taxes that are charged by the city and blend them together in a way that fits with the statute. And I, for one, would be delighted to serve on that process. I've been in Goodyear now investing in your land since 1973. I think Dee outranks me in terms of data service. Did you get here before that, Dee? Okay, so I think, is there anybody in the room here that's been around since 73? Mayor, you're the fifth mayor I've had the pleasure to work with out here. We've been involved in developing Goodyear in terms of the city's development, as well as
actual boundaries of the city through our annexations, and we've worked cooperatively over that long period of time, and we'd like to continue to do so. Our entire activity is in the city of Goodyear right now, and so any amount of time that you need to consume of mine, I'm willing to spend it to get this right and to make sure that all these developments that are poised and ready to come in aren't moved away at the last minute because of a mistake in the approach to this fee issue. Canyon Trails is an example. We've sold off all of our land for single family, which is, according to your econometric models, all the negative stuff. We're sitting here waiting for Vestar and a bunch of other commercial developers to come in. We've got apartment developers knocking at the door and office developers asking for our land. And now, from what we're hearing, they're all going to go over to Buckeye or Surprise instead of coming to work with us. And so the city, having now accepted the burden, as you see it, which I don't necessarily agree with, of all the single-family homes in Canyon Trails, is about to keep itself from the prize, which is all the items, all the types of uses that are going to generate the sales taxes to support the services for the single family. So I think it's very important that we get this right, and I look forward to working with you on that.
Okay, thank you. Any other cards? Okay, just want to say thank you to the staff and the public for your candor, your expertise, and your professionalism in this evening's public hearing, which is now closed. Ask the staff for summary of follow-up action.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, according to our notes so far, there was reference to staff getting the impact information on multifamily residential. Another was on staff will forward the consultant's presentation to the council from Elliott Pollock. And obviously, we will be sorting through the various comments received here at this time to determine what other adjustments can appropriately be addressed, and also look at the balance of suggestions in terms of what would the impact of a task force versus impact of a temporary fee versus, as Jay said, let's get it done and start over and get a process in place that works uniformly and consistently here and into the future. Some very good comments by all the parties, and we appreciate those very much. And we'll look at those and try to get a package put together for the council consideration.
Great. Thank you very much.